Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, Madame le greffier.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier. Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Greville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Southern. Madame le député Labbé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Tadier. Monsieur le député Luce.
Présent.
Madame le député Dublé. Monsieur le député Morel.
Présent.
Madame le député Le Hegarat.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ayer.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Alves. Madame le député Gardner. Monsieur le député Ghost. Monsieur le député Farnham. Madame le député Moore.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Mezek.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Joseph. Monsieur le député Balash. Monsieur le député Coles.
Présent.
Madame le député Poré. Monsieur le député Wall.
Présent.
Madame le député Miles.
Présente.
Madame le député Scott.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Renouf.
Présent.
Madame le député Curtis. Madame le député Feltham.
Présente.
Madame le député Binet.
Présente.
Madame le député Jeune. Madame le député Miller.
Présente.
Madame le député Howell.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Binet. Monsieur le député Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le député Kovac.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Curtis.
Présent.
Madame le député Ward.
Présente.
Madame le député Wilson. Madame le député Stevenson.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Andrews.
Monsieur le doyen.
Notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait le ciel et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a tablé les gouvernements et les puissances de la terre, pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, de les conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toute leur délibération est accompagnée de ta bénédiction. Réussisse au bien et au soulagement du peuple, qu'il te plaît de mettre à leur soin. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par les mérites de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné à t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne. Ta volonté soit faite sur la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien. Et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous envoie point en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Car à toi la règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier. Monsieur le député Southern.
Défaut.
Monsieur le député Tadier. Madame le député Dublé.
Présente.
Madame le député Alves.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ghost.
Sir, Deputy Gort is absent on state's business. He is attending a joint Channel Islands visit with Deputy Latok from Guernsey to the Channel Islands Brussels office and meeting with a number of ambassadors while he was there.
Well, state's business.
Monsieur le Député Farnham. Monsieur le Député Joseph.
So, Deputy Joseph is at a medical appointment this morning. He is coming in, but it's also that he's got his first question. I wondered if it could be rescheduled until he arrives.
Yes. The first thing is, presumably, the members accept that Deputy Joseph should be excusé for the purposes of his medical appointment. I think we have to deal with the question when we come to question time. If you'd like to make that request, then it'll be a matter for members.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Monsieur le Député Balache. Vous jurez que Monsieur le Député Balache est tellement indisposé qu'il ne peut pas assister aux états sans exposer sa santé. Madame le Député Jeune.
So Deputy Jeune requests to be excused on the basis of parental responsibilities relating to the health of one of her children.
Parental responsibilities.
Monsieur le Député Binet.
Present.
Oh. As if by magic. Yes. Les États sont constitués.
Sir, if I may.
Yes.
Would it be the right time, sir? I need to take my wife for a hip operation at 11 o'clock this morning. I'll be gone for about an hour. Is that permitted?
Well, indeed, you've notified the Assembly, and by tradition, the Assembly takes note of that and lets members go on compelling appointments.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, can I raise a defo on Deputy Southern, please?
Shouldn't we wait a bit? Yes, defo is raised on Deputy Sub. Very well. There are a number of subordinate actions under B. A number of matters have been presented or laid as described in the consolidated order paper under section C. The following matters have been lodged under D. States of Jersey Development Company pre-sales provisions for residential developments and pre-lets provisions for commercial developments P.8 amendment lodged by the Council of Ministers. Revocation of Aviemore sale P9 lodged by Deputy Alex Curtis. Draft Westaway Trust transfer of assets Jersey law lodged by the Minister for Treasury and Resources, that's P10. Evidence-based energy strategy P11 lodged by Deputy Jeune. Social Security Tribunal, reappointment of panel members, P12, lodged by the Minister for Social Security. Income Support Medical Appeal Tribunal, reappointment of panel members, P13, lodged by the same Minister. Jersey Police Complaints Authority, appointment of members, lodged by the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs, P14. Draft Control of Housing and Work Residential Employment Status, Jersey Regulations, P15, lodged by the Chief Minister. Increased stamp duty for properties that are not principal residents to 5%, lodged by Deputy Andrews, P16. In accordance with Standing Order 34.1, the proposer of amendment to Standing Orders remote participation in states meetings lodged by the Privileged Procedures Committee has withdrawn that proposition. In accordance with Standing Order 1372B, Mr. G. Phipps has given written notice to me of his intention to resign as a member of the Public Accounts Committee. I don't think we are yet in a position to move to reappointment. That's subject to various notice periods that have to be given. There's nothing under G and H. Answers to written questions have been tabled, and members will have those. We come now to oral questions, and the first question would normally be asked of Deputy Joseph, who is currently at a medical appointment. Do members agree that question 1 may be put to the end of the question list if time still remains to deal with it? Very well. Come then to question 2. The Connétable St Martin will ask of the Minister for Infrastructure. Connétable.
Thank you, sir. Following the publication of the Collision and Casualty Reduction Plan 2025 to 2034, will the Minister outline what plans exist, if any, to educate the public on the hierarchy of road safety, and will he advise when a road safety officer will be appointed?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy not only for her question, Constable, I beg your pardon,
Yes.
I should know that. Thank the Constable not only for her questions, sir, but also should acknowledge the work that she did in order for this collision and casualty reduction plan to actually get off the ground. So my thanks to her. So the collision and casualty reduction plan is built on the safe systems approach and with 6 priorities. Priority 5 of that is around safe people, which is about promoting responsible behaviours through education, enforcement and shared responsibility. So we're in the process of recruiting a technical support officer, which will be similar to a road safety officer, but will do a variety of tasks. We're launching a website in April. We're using social media and we'll be using events as part of our education plan. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Constable.
Yes, thank you. Will the technical support officer be going into schools as a road safety officer used to do so? And what will the role be? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The technical support officer will be going into schools. We're also working with SIPES to see what else we can do, but we'll also be targeting other groups throughout the community and not just youngsters. So I think we need to work with all of our community about the importance of road safety. I was at a talk yesterday and the subject of dark clothing came up, and it's not just youngsters that wear dark clothing, so when they're out on the road there's many people of all different ages. I think we've got a lot of work to do here, and the role and the team will be working very hard. Thank you.
Deputy Tadier.
So one of the factors that may contribute to pedestrian safety is when fields encroach onto pavement. So there are areas, I've raised this with the Minister before. What steps will the Minister be taking to determine who is responsible for such encroachments, whereby pavements are often so narrow that barely an individual can walk along safely, let alone a pushchair or a wheelchair?
Thank the Deputy for his question. We have corresponded in the past, sir. I'm aware of a number of pavements, not only in St John but around the island, where the hedges are encroaching the roads, and there is some capacity in the broncage law, sir, but it's quite difficult. We try to encourage landowners in the first instance. When it comes to charging, that's when we do get a problem, but we try to encourage the landowner in the first instance. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Tadier.
And does the Minister understand that this isn't just about hedges, it's about actually when banks are spilling over onto pavements, taking up often half of the pavement, and it's a case of putting that back and establishing who the owner is? Is that something that's on the Minister's radar?
It is not under the road safety area, but it is a matter that's on our radar. It's not just pavements, it's also on roads and by roads. It is becoming more and more of an issue. Traditionally, the bond lay used to be collected, but clearly that doesn't happen now, and so we have to work with landowners. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Renniff.
Yes, sir. I wonder if the Minister has any sort of vision for what he is hoping to achieve in terms of road safety. For example, a goal of reducing deaths to 0 over a certain period of time.
Yes, sir. That is actually part of the plan, sir. And if people do get a chance to read the plan, sir, they'll see the aim there is to reduce the amount of injuries and deaths in collisions in the next 10 years. But clearly, we would love to get to 0 collisions and 0 serious incidents. But it is included in the plan, sir, the targets. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy. Final supplementary question, Connie Martin.
Thank you. I'm hoping that the education will go out to all islanders, and will the Constable confirm that the education will extend to the life-changing and sometimes fatal effects of drink driving? Thank you.
Yes, sir. The report talks about the cost of fatal collisions and serious collisions, but really it's the human cost, sir, which is immeasurable, and we all need to play our part, not only with drink driving, sir, but drug driving is becoming more of an issue, and the team are working on legislation to introduce levels and also roadside testing for drugs. Thank you, sir.
Indeed. We come to question number 3 on the order paper. The Deputy Miles will ask the Minister for Infrastructure. Deputy.
Thank you, sir.
Following reports written in 2018 and 2022 to assess the accessibility of the State's Chamber and its environs, will the Minister advise how he's ensuring that the necessary work is being carried out in the State's building to ensure compliance with disability legislation, and what priority has been given to this work?
Thank you, sir. I thank the Deputy for her question. So it's an important topic which we are taking forward. This building, which houses the island's Parliament, should be accessible as possible. But of course, we work in an old and historic building with practical challenges. Officers from Property Holdings most recently met with the Diversity Forum on the 13th of February, and we continue to work with them to determine which of the recommendations made in those reports fall to the tenants and which are of obligation of the landlord. We'll also be in discussions with planning to understand the recommendations made, what is and isn't achievable due to planning restrictions associated with the premise, and we've given a 4-week timetable to get feedback on that. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
I thank the Minister for his question. I was certainly part of the Diversity Forum when his officers came in to talk to us. We have an election coming up again in 2026, and we are trying to make this Assembly as diverse as possible. How will the Minister tackle the current accessibility issues of this chamber, and what will he do before 2026 to remove the barrier for some potential candidates from standing for election?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I don't believe anybody should be barred from standing from election, sir, because of ability, physical ability. So there is a larger piece of work to develop a matrix across all of our properties, not only this building, and clearly funding is a challenge for us, and it's an objective for the team in 2025 to come up with a plan where we can find ways to make this building and other buildings in our responsibility more accessible. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister believe that it is actually possible to make this present building completely accessible and compliant?
So I'm not an engineer. I believe it's possible to get people to this part of the building, to the floor of the Assembly, sir. I think it would be a struggle to get people to the gallery. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy Dublé.
Does the Minister believe that this building is still fit for purpose?
So I believe we're meeting here today, sir, so I believe it must be fit for purpose. Is it ideal? No, it's not, sir. Would a new building be appreciated? Yes, it would, sir. But where is the money coming from, and where is it on our priorities? Thank you, sir.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Follow the previous answer from the Minister that mentioned that he would like to see this building and other buildings in the government ownership being fully accessible. Would the Minister advise if he does have a framework or table that all recommendations from reports from 2018 and 2021 are included, and we have prioritization over the years, bringing the building to comply with disability requirements?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I think I tried to touch on that earlier, sir, that there is a larger piece of work to develop a priority matrix across the whole estate. We only have a small amount of funding each year within Property Holdings to undertake DDA works, and that's the objective within the team, sir, to do the matrix this year and come up with a priority list. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy Gardner.
Would the Minister advise if he had requested funding for disability to work to make sure that buildings are compliant with disability in 2024?
So I must confess, sir, I did not ask for extra funding last year in the budget process. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Tadier.
It's okay, thanks. I don't need to ask.
Final supplementary, Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. In the interim, what discussions take place with the State's GREF in the Jersey Property Holdings capacity as landlord to understand and mitigate the risks associated with this building?
So I'm not aware of the details, sir, but I will find out and I will get back to the Deputy and members. Thank you, sir.
Well, we come to question number 4, which is included in the consolidated order paper, which Deputy Andrews will ask of the Attorney General.
Thank you, sir. Will the Solicitor General advise whether the Social Security Overlapping Benefits Jersey Order 1975, preventing carers in receipt of estates pension from receiving a home carer's allowance could be considered discriminatory?
Solicitor.
So I'm grateful. The answer is no. The order is not capable, as a matter of law, of being considered discriminatory. Discrimination as a matter of law can only arise in specified factual contexts which are set out in the Discrimination Jersey Law 2013, for example, employment, charity work, education, club membership. And then it can only arise in respect of the protected personal characteristics which are listed in Schedule 1 to the law. The personal characteristics which the law protects from discrimination do not include the fact of a person being in receipt of a state's pension. Indeed, being in receipt of a state's pension is not a personal characteristic at all. It's a financial benefit enjoyed by the person who receives it. It's not possible in law, therefore, to say that a reduction in a person's entitlement to a home carer's allowance to take account of the fact that they're already receiving a state's pension is discriminatory, because under the discrimination law it is not. Even if it could somehow be argued that it was, and in my view it firmly cannot, the discrimination law expressly provides that acts done pursuant to legislative authority are excluded from the operation of the law. The 1975 order and the social security law pursuant to which it was issued are examples of authority for the system to be operated as it is. So the act in question here is that of operating a scheme to regulate how much money individuals can receive in publicly funded financial benefits. And that is an act done pursuant to legislative authority, and it's therefore excluded from the operation of the discrimination law.
A supplemental question? Thank you very much. Then we move back to question question 5. The Deputy Moore will ask the Minister for External Relations. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Further to the favourable findings of the Moneyval Report 2024, will the Minister provide an update on the regulation and legislation of financial services review that was advised was being undertaken?
So may I? Thank you. So I thank the Deputy for a question. Following Jersey's very positive Moneyval report, the Minister for External Relations announced a review of the regulatory environment. He also established a working group to explore ways to increase the competitiveness of Jersey's financial services industry. The regulatory review forms an important part of this wider piece of work. The competitiveness programme has 4 work streams: an international tax strategy, on-island improvements to the business and regulatory environment, an external growth strategy, and a review of future financial services competitiveness and future regulatory posture. This final work stream will bring together the outputs from the other 3 and will be led by a panel of experts. These work streams are ongoing and will result in changes to policy and legislation during the course of this year, with the final report being published in 2026. Thank you.
Supplemental question.
Yes, thank you, sir. Following the also positive Moneyval report into Guernsey, will a review of the legislation and regulation, respective legislation and regulation, be included in the ongoing review into our own?
Sorry, sir, can I clarify? Did the Deputy mean are we reviewing Guernsey's legislation?
Yes, the respective areas of legislation and regulation that also appear in our own.
Sir, I believe the focus is on the position of Jersey's regulation and legislative framework. It may be that we will consider things they do in Guernsey where there is a competitive difference between us, but I don't think an overall review of Guernsey, just because it's Guernsey, is on the cards, but it will, I'm sure, form part of the overall competitiveness work.
Very well, we move now to question 6. Deputy Jeune is excused, therefore question 6 falls off the order, and we move now to question 7. The Deputy IA will ask of the Minister for Sustainable and Economic Development. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. I think you're going off the previous order paper. I don't think your order paper has been updated. Just to mention, sir. Thank you.
You know, my order paper has been updated, but I made my personal notes from the wrong order paper, so thank you, Deputy, for that correction. We now come to question 6 that Deputy IA will ask of the Minister for Sustainable and Economic Development. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Further to his response to written question 41/2025, will the Minister advise the Assembly whether alternatives to the DFDS AS supplied contingency ferry service were sought and whether an equivalent amount was paid by Guernsey to secure the service, and if so, how much? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So, given the scale and urgent nature of funding support requested of the governments of Jersey and Guernsey by Condor at the time, it was mutually agreed between the islands that a direct approach to DFDS was appropriate to ensure the immediate provision of contingency for the island's supply chain. This followed on from contingency scenario planning undertaken jointly with Guernsey dating back to January 2023. So all contingency costs throughout 23 and 24, including the berthing trials of contingency vessels, were met equally by the governments of Jersey and the states of Guernsey. It was only the last few months in 25 where Guernsey was not involved in the payments. I'm just realising, sir, as well, that the Deputy has asked how much, and I don't have that to hand, so I will have to send that to the Deputy afterwards. I do apologise for that.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. In written question 41, it was mentioned that correspondence was received from Condor in September 2024, setting out worries about the solvency of the company and that it may need between 11 and 34 million of further financing. Why wasn't the decision made then to side with DFDS? And could the cost of the contingency ferry service have been avoided if DFDS had been awarded the contract earlier? Thank you, sir.
I thank the Deputy for his question, sir, and I think the Deputy's put his finger on many of the kind of what-if scenarios that were going through planning and processes at the time. So the Deputy is right that in September 24, I received a letter from Condor saying that in response to my request from them, whether they would be able to maintain services should they not win the tender process. They responded by saying they could not guarantee that unless support of between 11 and 34 million pounds was provided. We could have, at that point, although we were in the middle of a tender process at that stage, so the tender process was in full flow at that stage in September 2024. So it did, in my mind, seem appropriate to take that tender process to its conclusion. But equally, even if we had aborted the tender process at that stage to appoint an alternative to Condor, there is every chance that we would then have been in a situation where Condor were unable to provide those services from September through to the end of March next month. So there's a lot of balance of probabilities and risk assessment in that respect of understanding what would be the better way forward. Otherwise, the most important being protecting the supply chain to the island at the time.
Deputy.
So the Minister said that the matter of contingency only became an issue when if Condor weren't awarded the contract. Given that the contract wasn't going to be awarded for many months, why was contingency sought to be put in place? And could he confirm, I think, that the figure which he's previously mentioned is £500,000 a month that Jersey pays for contingency, or has paid?
Sir, the Deputy has made an assertion that I have said something. I don't believe I have said that, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy Secretary?
Sir, the Minister, the Minister could clarify, if he doesn't agree with the assertion, he could clarify. That would be the most helpful, I think. But in the absence of that, sir, could he, the supplementary is really whether or not he considers having awarded DFDS, I think my figure is correct in saying Jersey's given DFDS £3 million for doing nothing to date. Does that not put them in an advantageous position when they're one of the companies that was tendering for a processor?
So, to go back in terms of history, because the assertion the Deputy made was that it was only from that September letter that we...
May I raise a point of order? If the Minister said he didn't want to answer my question initially, I've asked a separate supplementary question. Could he answer that question, not the one that I asked at the beginning?
That's probably right. So you indicated you weren't in a position to respond to the first question because you hadn't said what it was said you'd said. In response, the deputy's asked a supplemental question, and it's reasonable to address it on its terms if you can.
I was just providing the context to get to the answer the deputy required, sir. If he could reappraise me of his question, that would be wonderful. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir. It would be preferable if the Minister just listened to the question in the first place.
No, we don't need exchanges like this. It is a question time. It's not uncommon for members who haven't understood to ask for a repetition of the question, or if they haven't heard it clearly, to ask for a repetition. I don't think it's appropriate to make direct personal observations about people listening or not listening. It would help us if you could just, I think, ask
So could I seek direction from the Chair, because this is eating into question time, and the Minister clearly remembers what the first question, which he didn't want to answer, was, and has forgotten what the second question is, so I will put it to him again. But I'm not the one in the wrong here, sir. The question is, given the fact that DFDS, I think, has had £3 million from Jersey's government for doing nothing to date, whilst they were also involved in a tender process against their competitor, did that not put DFDS a competitive advantage, given the fact that they're receiving that £3 million, which Condor did not receive?
Thank the Deputy for his question, and I can assure the Deputy that I asked for the question to be repeated because that interchange meant that I forgot it. It wasn't because I wasn't listening, sir. I think it's really important, sir, to understand that DFDS were not paid to do nothing. DFDS were paid to secure the charters of ferries, and it is my understanding that DFDS did so at cost. So those monies paid to DFDS were then passed on to the ferry owners for charters of those ferries, and that's exactly what happened, sir. So it was not DFDS making money, assuming that they were correct that they did it at cost. And so they were not placed at a competitive advantage. The contingency securement or the securing of contingency and the tender process were two completely different processes. DFDS were very aware of that, and I still to this day know that I've remained open to both Brittany Ferries and DFDS winning that tender process.
Well, final supplementary then, Deputy Aye.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise, were any legal fees for the ferry tender process included with this allocation of 4.3 million, and if so, how much? Thank you, sir.
Yes, Minister.
Sir, I would have to check. I don't know off the top of my head whether legal fees were included, but the Deputy talks about 4.3 million. And that was a figure that wasn't in his original question, so I'm not sure what he's referring to in that 4.3 million. Thank you, sir.
Very well. We come to question 7. The Deputy Gardener will ask of the Minister for Health and Social Services.
Thank you. Will the Minister commit to provide the terms of reference for any current consultation regarding the reorganisation of his department with either internal and external stakeholders, and if not, why not?
Thank you, Deputy, for her question. I have to say there is no current consultation. There's no planned future consultation. There was no terms of reference at the beginning, and as such, there is no terms of reference that can be made public. And I have to say, for my part, I cannot see where a terms of reference would fit in to this work. So perhaps the Deputy could explain to members how a terms of reference could be applied in this particular situation. Thank you, sir.
Well, the answer to the question, I think, was that there were no terms of reference, and that's why they can't be provided. Was it, Minister?
That's correct, sir. Completely correct.
Do you have a supplemental question to that, Deputy Gardener?
Just to clarify, was it also answered there is no ongoing consultation for restructure? I didn't hear.
No, the work that we can do, the work that we are able to do is either being done or is in the process of being done, and the work that has to come back to the Assembly is being formulated now, and that will come to the Assembly in the form of the time, sir.
So I do have a supplementary, and I would like to ask Minister to clarify, because at the public hearing with the Chief Executive Officer on the 12th of February, he expressly said that the Minister continued to consult. It's existing extensive consultation. When the consultation will be finished, we will write a business case. What's important for me to understand, does the Minister and his team is doing consultation for the restructure or not? Who is right and who is wrong with this answer?
Well, from my point of view, we've spoken to all the professionals involved because they're the ones that actually that we rely on to have feedback, and they're all very much in favour of what's happening. It doesn't mean that at certain points in time we may not. Well, we'll continue talking to the professionals involved as we need to, because it might need fine tuning. There's no formal consultation process currently happening, or no formal process planned.
Well, Deputy Andrews.
Thank you very much, sir. Well, if there is no consultation process that is ongoing, could it be considered rather autocratic if we are to then see a new independent body be set up and charities are then given little choice but to be part of this new independent body when they may choose to remain independent and away from the government? Thank you, sir.
Yes, Minister.
Well, I don't seem to remember saying that it would be an obligation for charities to become involved. It's an opportunity for them to become involved. And I don't see there's anything autocratic in this at all. We're elected to do a job, and it seems to have become a crime to have an initiative to do something positive to deliver better care for patients. I find that very strange, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy Andrews?
Yes, please, sir. Well, the purpose of the independent body is to obviously bring everything into one. However, if charities and other organisations choose to remain independent, will the Minister still be providing funding for those entities? And if not, why?
So I think all that will depend on how things evolve from here on. I don't see a particular tension in this regard at all.
Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. Is the Minister aware of the Government of Jersey's guidelines on holding consultations, and when did he last consider them, please?
I haven't inquired about them because I don't think I have a need to. I'll be bringing a proposition to the Assembly shortly, and that's the point at which the Assembly gets involved in this. I'm really at a loss as to know what's going wrong here. I can't help feeling that some of the members here are trying to create a crisis of process abuse where none exists, and it certainly wouldn't be the first time, sir.
Supplementary
Thank
question.
you, sir. Yes, I'd be very grateful for that. It appears that the Chief Executive considers that a consultation process is underway, and it might be helpful if the Minister could outline why there seems to be a difference of opinion with regard to this consultation process between himself and the Chief Executive.
Well, the Chief Executive's a busy man, and he may not know that we've reached the point at which the main consultation, the principal consultation is finished. But as I say, this is not a crime. If I carry on talking to health professionals about fine-tuning, I don't see there's anything untoward in that at all. As I say, this looks to me like another attempt to create a crisis of process abuse where none exists, sir.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. I think I heard the Minister say that he'd spoken to a lot of professionals who'd all agreed with the proposals. The former Chief Officer, Chris Bown, has been employed by the Department in an advisory capacity since December. Can the Minister outline what discussions he's had relating to his reorganisation of the Health Service with Mr. Bown?
So I don't have a list of the conversations I've had. I've spoken to a good number of people over a good many months, and we have to bear in mind that the former Chief Executive left office formally to go for an operation at the beginning of October. So that's something like 5 months ago. So I'm sorry, I haven't got a list of my engagements and conversations with him on the matter.
Sir, I don't feel that answered the question. It's one person.
But the Minister has said he doesn't have a list of his conversations, and therefore he can't answer the question. What the consequence of that is a different thing, but if he can't answer
So I'm happy to say that I've spoken to the Chief Executive on it on a number of occasions, but as I say, when you have hundreds of conversations with people about a particular issue, it's hard to be able to, if the Deputy would have asked me for a list, I could perhaps look back in my file, but as I say, off the top of my head, I can't give him a list of dates, and I think if the Deputy was in the same position as me, he'd find that very difficult too. I don't think it's a realistic question, to be honest with you, sir.
Well, there we are. That was the question. Do you have a supplemental, Deputy Whip?
Yes, sir. The Minister said that the former Chief Officer had gone for an operation 5 months ago. However, he did come back to the department in an advisory capacity and has been working in that capacity, or available at least in that capacity, since December. So the department is paying him money. He is a highly experienced in different types of health organisation. Can the Minister confirm whether or not he has spoken to Mr. Bowen since he came back to work in December?
No, sir, I've neither seen nor spoken to the individual concerned, and I'll say again that I don't consider that to be a crime.
Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister give some information, if there isn't a terms of reference, what materials were presented to those being consulted, who was included in the consultation, who was not included, what format did it take, what questions was the Minister seeking to answer, how wide was the scope? We would like some more detail, I think, on it, exactly what the form of the consultation was.
I'll tackle this from my notes, sir. I'll just say details of this consultation, who was consulted, the ideas upon which they were consulted, and the feedback received is all a matter of public record. All members of this assembly were invited to a briefing on the consultation results, and the feedback report was circulated to all members. So I think everything that needs to be said has been said, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy Dublé. Effectively, the answer is that it's in the public domain.
Yeah. Can the Minister explain what the difference is between a briefing and a consultation is in the work that he's done around this matter?
A briefing, I think, is when you tell somebody exactly what you're going to do, and a consultation is when you take ideas to people and ask them for opinions.
Well, Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. I would just like a bit more information about the all professionals comment. When the Minister said that all professionals had been consulted, could he give some examples of what he considers to be all professionals, and what levels are we talking, and how far is that encompassing? Is it just within health or elsewhere? Thank you.
Well, I make the point again that all of this material, and I wish members, if they're going to ask these questions, would first do their homework, because all of the stuff that I've spoken about is in the public domain. I think we did 14 different consultations. We spoke to GPs, we spoke to charities, care homes, home care providers, and various sections of HCS. So it's pretty comprehensive, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy Stevenson.
Yes, sir. The Minister just read various sections of HCS. Again, I was asking about the levels that people were consulted at. And I think it's one thing saying that there are sections, GPs, for example. Is it all GPs were spoken to? And all healthcare professionals? What level are we talking about here, sir?
Oh, well, I think there's... I don't want to use the word, no, I'll be careful how I describe that question. I think there were over 3,000 people involved. So I have to say, categorically, we didn't speak to 3,000 people. No, we didn't. We, in the main, spoke to their representative bodies in exactly the same way as you'd expect.
Well, final supplementary, Deputy Gardner.
Absolutely. At least we have a clarity. I would like to ask Minister, so if I understood correct, there is no consultation any further for reorganization of the health and care Jersey. If it's correct, can the Minister communicate with the Chief Executive and reassure him that the consultation is finished and the officers can get on and to create a business case, which actually is Chief Officer, the Chief Executive agreed that it's important to good governance, which is Precy requested.
Well, nobody's been, the question presupposes that somebody's been prevented from doing something insofar as they're going to be allowed to get on. Of course they're getting on with things. I don't see the Chief Executive every day of the week. I'm certainly happy to update him. He's got an awful lot of work to do, and I think he's taken the view that we sort of get on with things, and things have been progressing without interruption. And once again, there is no crisis here, and there's no crime being committed. And I think it's a good piece of work trying to improve patient care, And I'm sorry that people, certain members don't seem to be able to be a little bit more supportive than they are.
Sir, it wasn't about the crime. It was asked if he can inform the chief executive that consultation is finished. Yes or no, that he can progress with business case.
I certainly can, sir, but I consider that to be a complete irrelevance, if you don't mind me saying.
Well, I think this is question, this is answer. I think the question has been answered, Deputy Gardner, and we're moving on. We come now to the next question, 8 on the order paper. Deputy Wilson will ask the Minister for Sustainable Economic Growth. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Following the publication of the DFDS freight service charges, will the Minister explain why DFDS has been appointed as the new ferry operator, given their higher rates?
Thank you, sir. I think it's very important that the Assembly understands that both ferry operators who tendered for the ferry services provided higher rates in terms of freight. So regardless of who was chosen, freight rates would be slightly higher as a result of the tender process. And that's a reflection of the cost of providing a sustainable fleet and a sustainable ferry service going forward. Because I think one of the things we can probably agree on is that particularly given the requests for multi-million-pound cash injections, the previous ferry service or the current ferry service has not been sustainable from a financial perspective. So as well as the both tender bidders giving higher prices, DFDS scored highest overall during independent evaluation across a broad range of tender criteria, including pricing, customer service, financial sustainability, fleet investment, scheduling, and also commercial operations. And so a tender process doesn't focus on just one element of any service, regardless of what you're tendering for. It has to look at the whole range of elements within that service.
Supplemental question, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to the Minister for his response. Can the Minister just clarify whether there was any consultation with the public and from freight providers to move to a flat rate card? And can he tell us what the outcome of those discussions were?
I thank the Deputy for her question, and I think it's very important at this point that people have been talking about a flat rate card. A flat rate card provides transparency, and a flat rate card provides the ability for competition in the freight services sector, which until now has been impossible due to barriers that have been created by the current pricing system. Consultation was undertaken by the JCRA with regard to their freight review, and informal consultation rather than formal consultation had been undertaken by officers in my department and elsewhere with regard to freight, but not in a formal manner.
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. I think members will recall that the Minister was certainly hopeful that the flat rate card would lead to lower freight charges overall and perhaps help ease cost of living pressures. Is he disappointed that the freight rates have gone up?
Sir, I'm neither disappointed nor the opposite of what that may be. Freight rates were going up. As I started the answer to the original question, both tender bidders provided higher freight rates in order to provide that sustainable fleet. There's a reality in life, pricing goes up. And indeed, we've seen this year, so January this year, Condor in their current pricing put their freight rates up for the first quarter of this year, the last quarter that they're serving Jersey. So, and obviously in the past, Condor and freight providers have put their freight rates up significantly, I believe in double-figure amounts just a year ago. And so again, one of the things that we have now in the current, well, not the current, in the provision for ferries that will come from the end of March, is we have RPI limits on freight pricing. And so from now on, we have a kind of price capped in that respect freight rate card. And that will be the same going forward, so we can take away any surprises for freight users for the next 20 years.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, I thank the Minister for his answer. The transparency is obviously a good thing in general. Could he clarify whether he still believes that transparency will, could the Minister clarify whether he still believes that transparency will lead to more than just the good feeling of transparency, but could lead to lower prices in the long term, or is it just a hope that it's a good thing to have?
I understand the question, and it's impossible to 100% predict the future. I can't tell, none of us know exactly what will happen in 10 minutes, let alone in 20 years. So there is always an element of hope, I think, to address that element of it. I do believe transparency now means that there is no mystery about the ferry freight pricing. Until now, even at the level of government, we have not had a full understanding of where ferry freight pricing is. And from now on, we will have that. And that, I think, is very, very important. So then we will be able to see how much this logistics providers are offering or requesting fair pricing for their services, as opposed to this mystique and this mystery as to how much was for the ferries and how much was for the freight service providers. Now we'll know exactly how much it is for the ferries. So then the freight service providers will be able to compete in a much more kind of informed manner than they were previously.
Deputy Curtis.
Thank you, sir. And actually that last part of the answer I think is really helpful from the Minister, because my question will still be around that flat rate card. And does the Minister have any knowledge as to whether any of the operators on top of the freight service have seen a lower price based on the flat rate card? In essence, they were punished. It sounds like you may not know, but obviously, has any operator come forward and said, actually, this is a better deal for us?
I believe that is the case. Certainly, if you work off the current rate card, as in Condor's current rate card, then the majority of freight logistics service providers, I believe, should be experiencing lower prices from the ferry company. That's my
Supplemental question? Deputy Tadier.
So the Minister said that a flat rate card provides transparency, but does he also agree that it prevents the business, so DFDS, offering discounts for bulk buying?
That is correct. It does do that. And I think the kind of metaphor that I've used, or the imagery I've used, is it's a toll bridge. The ferry service is a toll bridge, sir, and was akin to a toll bridge. And on a toll bridge, you don't tend to get volume discounts. And it's the same with the ferry service. What's important is that we understand how much, and now we are limiting price rises in the ferry service coming forward. Everyone will be paying the same amount for that ferry service. Therefore, the competition can take place on a fair foundation provided by that ferry service.
Supplemental, Deputy?
The Minister talked about the fact that he expected that a majority of importers would see a reduction in their fees relative to what Condor ferries currently offer. But does he also acknowledge that there are perhaps one or two big importers in Jersey which previously might have benefited from a bulk discount, and if that bulk discount is no longer being passed on to customers, that there is a strong likelihood that that discount won't be passed on to customers, and they will see their prices going up in the shops potentially?
I should firstly, sir, qualify me saying majority. That was just my understanding. Potentially, I may be wrong in that. It may not be a majority. I don't know because I haven't done a poll. But it is possible that the biggest freight providers find themselves at something of a disadvantage as a result of these changes. That is possible. It's also very difficult for us to know. We have only been able to work off Condor's published rate card. Any further discounts, etc., may not be in line with things such as competition law and stuff like this, and matters like this. So I think it is, and so we are not informed as government of any other deals beyond the rate card itself. And were there any other deals, then I think that could be problematic from a competition perspective.
Deputy Ward, then final supplementary. No other questions, Deputy?
Thank you, sir. I just want to tackle the Minister about the rate capping policy which is brought in, because I'm very conscious that there is a rate charge, but what we've seen in the past has been additional supplementary charges being made. So it could be that the fuel price has suddenly jumped, so we find there's a supplementary on top of the base rate charged. So when the Minister talks about capping, does he mean capping for everything, or does he mean capping for one element and then there is an opportunity for the freight companies to put in a supplementary charge if things change and they can't match that capping rate in line with inflation? Could he elaborate on that a little bit more? Thank you.
It's an excellent question from the Deputy, and it's really important. So yes, the capping is on the actual freight price. There is for both, and again, both tenderers and currently Condor do operate a supplementary element for, it's called BAF, but it's for the bunker fuel and for fuel prices, which provide volatility. Now, importantly, under the DFDS service, their formula for how they work out the supplementary fuel charge is public. So all islanders will be able to see exactly how they calculate the fuel surcharge. They insist absolutely that there is no profit made out of that fuel surcharge. It is purely a surcharge for excess fuel costs. On their website, you can find the fuel surcharge for every route they operate. And so they are entirely transparent, telling you exactly how much their fuel surcharge is and how they calculate it. So that is there. That level of transparency is not there currently.
Supplemental? Final supplementary, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to the Minister for those answers. One of the questions that's repeatedly being asked by members is what support was there originally to move to a flat rate card under this tender process, and if that support was on questioning, can he guarantee that there will be no changes to the flat rate card arrangements during the course of this tender?
I'm genuinely not 100% understanding what the Deputy means by support, but in terms of the contract, yes, these are contractually written in elements, and so there will, to my knowledge, be no change going forward. We have locked in a kind of RPI pricing rises, at maximum RPI pricing rises, or RPI linked pricing rises. I believe it is just RPI. And whilst you can negotiate changes to a contract, etc., so that is possible, but that would need to be through negotiation. And obviously, any changes to the revenue delivered via the contract ultimately have an impact on other elements such as fleet investment, ticket pricing for passengers, and so on. And so if there are changes, because obviously the model has been built on the existing contract, so any changes to that contract would require revision to other elements of the model, such as fleet investment.
Well, we come to question 9. The Deputy Renniff will ask the Chief Minister. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Further to the Chief Executive's statement that Jersey is over-regulated during his speech at the recent Chamber of Commerce lunch, will the Chief Minister advise whether he intends to undertake any review of current island regulations, and if so, in which areas, and if not, why not?
Thank you, sir. Some work is already underway to review regulation. For example, Deputy Gorse has started a review of Jersey's economic competitiveness and growth, particularly in the financial services sector. The Treasury Minister alluded to that in an earlier answer. This will include a review of the regulatory regime. Deputy Luce has announced improvements to the planning system, and there is a wider review of planning regulation ongoing. That will shortly be going out to public consultation, sir. Changes are also being considered to the alcohol licensing law. New control of housing and work regulations have been lodged. And the answer to the original question is that we are considering a government-wide review of all regulation. We haven't decided if that's absolutely necessary yet, as we are focusing on areas we believe to be quite heavily regulated. And in the meantime, ministers will continue to look for opportunities to reduce regulatory burdens and streamline processes. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental, Deputy Renniff.
Yes, sir. I thank the Chief Minister for his answer. It was noticeable that the focus is very much on government and business in terms of over-regulation. Can Can he confirm that there is another side to the regulatory question, which is that the public also have an interest in regulation and indeed in the protections, the economic level playing fields and so on that regulation can bring? So can he reassure the Assembly that it will not just be a question for business and government, that the public will also be invited to contribute to any reviews of regulation?
Yes, sir, I can. I'm not sure whether the public will be invited to consult with every bit of the regulatory regime we're looking at. But for example, planning is a good example, and the Minister is going to public consultation on that soon. Of course, we recognise there is very necessary and important aspects of regulation. And I think that, and regulation that provides a safety and well-being for islanders, and that's areas it would be absolutely appropriate to seek public consultation should we wish to look at those. Thank you.
Coles.
Thank you, sir. As alluded to in the previous question, there are certain aspects of services that are provided to the public that aren't provided by government. So therefore, a base level of competency should be assessed, and this can be achieved by regulation. Does the Chief Minister then think that these kind of regulations should still be a priority?
I wonder if the Deputy, sir, could allude to the regulations. He sort of lost me a little bit there. I'm not quite sure what he's referring to.
Yeah, certainly, sir. Certain services, for example, counselling services is something that I have mentioned previously, are currently unregulated within Jersey, so anybody can call themselves a counsellor and offer support with people for their mental health. And so without any form of regulation in this area, there is no minimum level of qualification required.
Well, so I'd have to think about that. Generally, professional qualifications are required by the associations that govern those sort of areas of business. And there is also legislation that also acts to protect, but I'm not sure what's the answer to that. We'd have to consider that. I'm not sure there are any major gaps in that area at the market, although we have been made aware of people practicing without the necessary regulation in the past, sir. So short answer is something we could look at, but I mean we are reluctant to introduce new regulation unless it's absolutely necessary.
Supplemental question, Deputy Coles.
Yes, thank you, sir. So there's many industries like this, so including dentists as well as people who provide cosmetic procedures. Should not the public interest come before public safety come before red tape?
Yes, I believe public safety should always come first, but that's not to say we have to regulate every single activity. So we need to be considered in what we do regulate. But I do undertake to, well, I hope to reassure members that public safety and well-being is at the forefront of our thoughts on regulation. So when we look at areas that are over-regulated, we will always bear that in mind, sir. Thank you.
Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. Has the Chief Minister been made aware of the work that the Director of the Ministerial Support Unit had been tasked with, and I do believe commenced under a request from the former Chief Minister to remove regulations, to identify regulations that can easily be removed because they are now superseded or in place with little effect?
Yes, sir, we will utilise that work on our quest to continue to reduce unnecessary regulatory burden.
Supplementary question, Deputy. I have Deputy Alex Curtis, then Deputy Taddy, Deputy Wilson, then final supplementary. No other questions. Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you. So will the Chief Minister be making it clear the difference between regulatory burden and the level of regulation in any consultation?
Well, we'll try to, sir, yeah.
Supplemental question to that, sir?
Yes, sir. I mean, the examples of regulation the Chief Minister gave earlier describe problems that his ministers seem to be wanting to solve regulatory burden. Does he think it's appropriate to continue a narrative of over-regulation when the key areas he wishes to solve seem to be the burden of regulation on businesses, not the fact that it exists?
I think we're talking about terminology, sir. I'll try and simplify it. This government believes that in certain areas we were over-regulated. Now, we can call that a burden, we can call it over-regulation, but what we want to do is to make sure we have appropriate regulation that benefits our community and our society, sir, and we're trying to find the right balance that helps.
Deputy Tellier.
Will the Chief Minister state whether he believes the CEO's comments about over-regulation also apply to the Jersey's finance industry?
I'm not sure if they were, it was a general comment, sir. I'm not sure it was meant to be specific to any particular sector. But that regulation of Jersey finance is something that is being reviewed, as I mentioned earlier, as part of the work that the the Minister was responsible responsibility for financial services is leading on. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Tellier.
Yeah, I mean, would the Chief Minister give his own view and perhaps state where, on the one hand, often regulation, particularly the finance industry, is something that is celebrated, that we are well regulated. On the other hand, we often hear calls from certain sections of the industry that they are over-regulated. Could the Minister say if he's got any initial inclinations as to which of those may be more likely to be true?
Well, sir, I think regulation, when it comes to financial services, one of our most important unique selling points is that we are well and properly regulated, and that's been reflected in the recent Moneyval report, sir. It's also reflected in the fact that we are one of the highest regarded offshore financial centres in the world, sir. So regulation is important, but we need to make sure that that regulation is balanced and appropriate, that it doesn't stifle a competition, and that it continues to promote our financial services industry as one of the best in the world, sir.
Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Could the Chief Minister tell us what he actually means by over-regulation?
Well, if we take regulation in its broadest term of being rules imposed on society, businesses, by the government, sir, I deem that some of those rules perhaps go too far and are stifling business activity or other or freedoms of the public in certain areas. That's a very broad description of what we mean. So, and I caveat that, of course, by saying sub-regulation is absolutely necessary, sir, especially in relation to public safety. And a good example of that, sir, where we are looking at making changes is in the road safety strategy recently announced, sir, by the Minister.
Supplemental, Deputy Wilson.
Does the Chief Minister believe that it would be helpful to have some frameworks for the public to understand what is good regulation, what is beneficial regulation, so that we know what the standards are and that it improves transparency?
Yes, I think any good regulation needs to be balanced, and it needs to be clear, plain, fairly simple as it possibly can, so it can be communicated to the public, so it can create greater understanding. I think if you asked an ordinary member of the public to explain what they knew about our financial services regulation, our planning regulation, our rather complicated alcohol and licensing laws, they wouldn't know very much about it. So I agree with that. If we can introduce an element of simplification, so it's easier for the public to understand, so we would support that.
Final supplementary, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, there's an interesting exchanges, and what it raises in my mind is surely the issue is rather than focusing on over-regulation, which risks creating a simplistic impression that regulation is bad and a burden, the focus should be on good regulation, on being well regulated, in recognition of the vital importance of some regulations.
I think that is at the heart of what we're trying to do. So I've used some examples of where we feel over-regulated, but the Deputy's absolutely right. We aim to have good regulation, well-balanced regulation, sir, and that will be our key objective.
Well, we come to question 10 that Deputy Ward will ask of the Minister for Infrastructure. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Further to the response to written question 43/2025 and the £230,017.59 committed to external redecoration repairs the after Par Lido, will the Minister provide a breakdown of this expenditure by each piece of work undertaken and advise the organisations engaged to carry out this work?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. The breakdown of the expenditures as follows. Preliminary works, £54,126. The work schedule, which included hard standing areas, elevations A, B and C, the plunge and children's pool and the freestanding store totalled £1,403,244. Other costs, including day works, provisional sums and contingency, totalled £32,646. I can break this down further so and give greater detail outside the time constraints of an oral question, and ASA Bespoke is the appointed main contractor for these works and therefore the contractor to Jersey Property Holdings. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question.
Thank the Minister for his answer. So in the answer to written question 43, I note that there was a £61,000 spent on renewing the electrics, yet no budget has been set aside to repair the roof that has been leaking for the best part of a decade. What does the Minister believe that his department will, when does the Minister believe that his department will repair the roof so as not to jeopardise the good work that has been carried out?
Sir, the Deputy repeatedly asks me questions on this subject, sir, which I try to answer as best I can. So today's question is about external redecoration and repairs, sir. I've answered the Deputy the sums that I've got in front of me, sir, and I have to go away and find out further details. I've got a 12-page schedule in front of me, sir, which I think is more akin to a written question than an oral question. Thank you.
Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister provide details of the level of assurance for the parts, labour and materials of the work carried out at the Lido?
Sorry, could the Deputy repeat the question, sir? Sorry.
Could you point out the level of insurance for the parts, labours and material for the work?
So I don't know the details, so I'd imagine they're part of our standard terms that we would agree with any contractor for any of our buildings, not specific to the Lido. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Holmes?
Will the Minister assure that if any failures of the work of this large investment occur, that he will be approaching the contractor to ensure it's repaired?
So that would depend on the nature of the failure, sir. We have to remember the Lido is in the middle of the sea. So, and we see storms which submerge the Lido, and so it's a very difficult building to maintain. If there's faulty product or faulty workmanship, we would certainly challenge the provider of that service. But so we have to appreciate that the Lido is in the middle of the sea. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. My apologies if I misheard, but the sums that the Minister read out didn't seem to me to come close to £230,000, I think it is the total. Is it the case that the work has come in under, or did I just mishear, and that there are elements there that do get us to that total?
I believe the sum comes, in my head, sir, the sum is 230, sir. 143, 54 and 32. Thank you.
Very well. Do you have a supplemental question?
No, sir, I misheard. I apologize.
Final supplementary, Deputy Ward.
Yes, sir. Just to come back to this breakdown of the figure, I noticed that in the last Assembly, the Minister withdrew his commentary around the cost of the scaffolding, and that he hasn't separated that out. Could he give an update on the scaffolding cost within that figure?
So I understand that the Deputy had received a written response to that question. So I believe the sum was £42,000 for the scaffold, but that's from the top of my head, sir. But I will get back and reconfirm that figure today. Thank you.
Well, we come now to question 11. The Deputy Porre will ask of the Minister for Health and Social Services. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister explain the current process required for an adult to obtain a diagnosis of ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, And please advise the current waiting list to receive a diagnosis and start any treatment. Thank you.
Minister.
So, I thank the Deputy for the question. So adults are referred to the specialist ADHD service that sits within the mental health services. And initial information is gathered, including from the patient, and a clinical interview and assessment is then undertaken, usually resulting in a diagnosis of ADHD. It's possible for a diagnosis of ADHD to be given within another part of the mental health services by a suitably qualified and experienced clinician who feels confident in making that diagnosis. But in practice, most clinicians don't feel confident to do this, and as a consequence, they make a referral to the ADHD specialist. It's also possible to receive an ADHD diagnosis privately in Jersey. As of the 21st of February, there were 957 adults on the waiting list for an ADHD assessment. Based on the current planned assessment rate, that gives a current waiting time of 4 years and 7 months if somebody's referred today. However, it's anticipated that this will reduce with a planned introduction of additional capacity to the team, assuming there's no increase in referral rates. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy Pori.
Thank you, sir. Following the recent review and recommendations produced by the HSS panel for additional government-funded additional staff to alleviate a large waiting list, can the Minister provide an update on the work done to date? Thank you.
The principal work being undertaken at the moment is to recruit a new nurse specialist who's also a prescriber. And the hope is that that will bring down rates reasonably rapidly, sir. That's the principal focus at the moment.
Deputy Dubé.
Thank you, sir. In the Minister's response to my panel's report on this area, he stated that there are 2 nurses currently undergoing training and also a senior nurse that has been recruited. Can the Minister update on those 3 posts, please, the senior nurse and the 2 nurses, who is actually in post, and if they're not in post yet, what is the timescale that the Minister is aiming for to have them in post?
I don't believe they're in post at present, and I don't have a date on me at the moment for when that's likely to be done, but I'm certainly happy to make that inquiry later today and get back to the Deputy.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Could the Minister also update on the issue of an ADHD hub or clinic, which is something that has been called for amongst the ADHD community very strongly?
I'm led to believe that there are some difficulties in terms of qualification as to what can happen there, and there's a requirement for more money, and as I think the Assembly knows well, there is no spare cash. But I'm meeting with the lady that coordinates the ADH group. I don't think it's formally a charity, but it's a large group on the island, and there's a date in the diary to meet with that lady to discuss the hub in more detail.
Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister explain what discussions have taken place with GPs to expand capacity for treatment?
I'm due to have a meeting with the representative bodies of GPs to have further discussions on the shared care pathway, and I'm happy to update the Assembly once that meeting's taken place.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you. Thank you for the response, Minister. Are there any barriers to these negotiations at all? For example, will it involve more investment?
I don't think the work with the GPs would involve more investment, but the creation of a hub probably would.
Very well. Final supplementary, Deputy Pori.
No, thank you, sir.
Very much indeed. We come now to question 12. The Deputy Talier will ask the Minister for Housing. Deputy.
Thank you. Further to the adoption of P.8 2022, will the Minister advise whether he is taking any steps to implement an empty residential property tax or a similar mechanism? And if not, explain how he intends to encourage the reuse of empty properties.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. The short answer to the first part of the Deputy's question is no, I'm not currently taking any steps to implement an empty residential property tax. In a previous government plan several years ago, £500,000 was allocated for a project to deal with empty homes. At the end of 2023, that funding expired, with only 10% of it having been spent, but some unbudgeted commitments set to continue in 2024 when I took over office. Because those commitments constituted little more than managing a spreadsheet of data of empty homes and not actual action to tackle empty homes, I decided to suspend that service because I regarded it as bad value for money. I regret that because that £500,000 of funding for a project like this expired and went back in as an underspend, I don't have resources within my budget at this point to pursue the kind of option that I would like to help tackle empty homes. And my preferences remain some kind of empty residential property tax or the introduction of empty property management orders, which I think would be helpful. But in the absence of being able to undertake that kind of project, members of my staff have been working with Her Majesty's Receiver General to assist him in using some of the old legal powers that he has to bring some formerly empty homes back into use. I'm pleased to see some of that has been happening. And I continue to liaise with some of my colleagues in governments about government-owned empty homes where there are opportunities to bring some of those back into use as well.
Supplementary question.
I thank the Minister for that comprehensive answer. If I refer to the Minister back to the actual wording of the proposition, the Part A stated that, and it was a decision that was passed by a strong majority, was to ask that an effective mechanism should be introduced to discourage domestic properties from being left vacant for long periods. So that is an in-principle decision of a previous Assembly, and I know how the Minister feels about previous decisions not being implemented. Would he revisit that first part with the Council of Ministers and ask for a fresh mandate from them to say that this decision still stands and that he can be provided with all the support that he might need in order to make sure that that effective mechanism to return empty properties back into use is brought to fruition?
Thanks, sir. I thank the Deputy for that question. I think the key word that he used in there was effective, and I think it's a matter of regret that funding was either not used or used on a measure that was not effective. The Deputy is right, though, that the decision of the States Assembly stands, and I'm more than happy to do what he has just suggested that I do, and hopefully, at the very least, provide for some groundwork, so at some point in the future, a project could recommence to help deal with this problem. I don't have the resources to tackle it right now, but it would be good if I could muster some political support to be able to do so in the future with perhaps an allocation at some point in a future budget. But I thank the Deputy for his suggestion, which I'll look at taking up.
Deputy.
Yes, sir. On October the 3rd, 2022, Deputy Mezek wrote to the then Chief Minister regarding P.8. He said there may well be a reasonable explanation as to why the Minister is unable to fulfil this Assembly decision, but no full explanation has been provided to States members. So that was written less than 3 months after the government had taken office. He's had more than 13 months since he took over the responsibility. Can he detail all the actions that he has taken to bring that into fruition?
Thank you, sir. When I took office, I attempted to utilise what work had already been done to get as much positive out of it, and I regret to inform the Assembly that there was precisely no positive to be taken from it. An unbudgeted spending commitment had been made without the outgoing government at that point seeking to provide long-term funding for it. So that meant that was money coming out of my budget for a project that was not capable or not set up to be able to get a single empty home back into use. My officers, I'm sure, would testify to the challenge that I put to them to try to salvage that service and get something good out of it. But, sir, that was not possible because nothing good was able to be achieved out of it, as it constituted not much more than a spreadsheet. What I have done is asked my officers to work, as I said in response to an earlier question, with with Her Majesty's Receiver General to use some legal powers that do exist. That is resulting in some empty homes being brought back into use. But so I think this is a good episode of showing what can happen when money is allocated to a project, but those in charge at the time don't have the vision to actually do anything positive with it.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, I think we get that the Minister doesn't think that the previous Minister was doing a good job on this, but the question is really about what he has done. What he has done since, and the previous Minister was at least able to get some money together. The proposition in question relates to an empty property tax. So can he tell us what he is doing to try and bring in an empty property tax?
So I believe I've answered that question very comprehensively, and I did so in the first sentence to my answer to Deputy Tadja. I am currently not doing anything to pursue that because I do not have the budget or resources to do so, because in a previous budget, it was the 2021 budget, by the way, so under the previous term of office, £500,000 was allocated to do that, 90% of which expired and was subsumed back into general revenue as an underspend and not reallocated, and I had not a penny in order to be able to dedicate to doing anything. And I think that's regrettable.
Deputy Ball.
Thank you, sir. And I'm truly saddened that the Minister did not follow on this, because the biggest issue we had was we didn't know how many vacant homes there were in existence. It started out around between 4,000 and 6,000. We managed through our research to get that down to 900. The purpose of the work is to make more effective use of the built environment. And as the Minister knows, his party has consistently voted against greenfields being redeveloped outside of St Helier. Surely, if we are going to make more effective use of the built environment, make housing more affordable for the people of Jersey, this kind of work should have been carried on, should be pursued. And as my department at the time found out, a tax is totally inappropriate in this scenario, in this setting.
Deputy, this has to be a question.
Sorry.
I mean, you've effectively done half a speech.
Okay, thank you, sir. So my question is does the Minister not believe in collecting data?
Yeah. It's a strange question, so I have no idea what else to say to that.
Do you have a supplementary to?
Is that it's correct to collect data, or it's not correct to collect data?
Well, I think the question was, does the Minister believe? And the answer was in a rather casual affirmative. I mean, I'm not sure it requires...
I don't think we can carry on this. Thank you, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Tadja.
Thanks, sir. I'm not so interested in the number of empty properties. We were told by the census it was somewhere in the region of £4,500, and I know just walking around St Bullard's, knocking on doors before Christmas, that's entirely believable. But could I ask the Minister, does he agree that if it's a question of money that is required to continue this work, could he, certainly for the next financial year, ensure that he has the sufficient resources to continue to find a way to introduce an effective mechanism to discourage the disuse of properties being left vacant for long periods of time?
I can't unilaterally ensure it, because obviously budget processes involve more than just me. They'll involve the whole government and ultimately the whole assembly. But I can ensure that I can make representations to ask to be in a position where we do get the resourcing in place to find not just ineffective mechanism, but effective mechanisms, because I think that there'd need to be more than one to approach empty homes that are empty in the long term for different reasons, some of which would be financial penalty based, others which in my view would be useful would be empty property management orders. But as I've said to the Deputy, I'm happy to make those representations to try to be in a position where we can move forward on that.
Much. Question 13, I think, falls away because Deputy Jeanne is excused. Question 14 is from Deputy Ozef. The Assembly agreed that question 1 could go to the end of the list. And I assume this, if he is available, goes to the end of the list as well? Well, we come then to question 15. The Deputy War will ask of the Minister for Infrastructure. Deputy.
I'm flavour of the month, sir. Further to the response to written question 43/2025, will the Minister provide the names of the structural and engineering consultants and those who provided consultancy services for the works undertaken after Parlido, advise whether all or any of them are Jersey-based consultants?
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for his question. Sir, the structural and engineering consultants are Hoskins, who are Jersey-based with over 40 years' experience. Mr. David Atkinson, who lives in Jersey, Pitch and Track, who are based in Jersey, and Latitude Building Consultancy, who are based in the UK. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
Yes, sir, thank you. A couple of days ago, sir, a fire was reported in the disabled toilets at the Lido. The smoke alarm failed to go off. Can the Minister advise which consultancy service determined that the fire safety system at the Lido needed replacing at a cost to the taxpayer of tens of thousands of pounds, and check that the work had been done properly, despite there being a report dated 24th of August 2024 from the fire service advising the existing alarm coverage was adequate for the use of the premises?
Well, Deputy, I'm not sure that as a supplementary that really has much to do with listing the names of the people who are employed in a certain capacity and identifying whether they're Jersey-based or not. Okay. I'm afraid it's not a general question about the work done on the Lido. It's a specifically...
In that case, sir, can I ask which consultancy firm was used for the installation of the fire service, making the recommendation on the fire system?
I think that is a legitimate question if you're aware of the answer.
Apologise, sir. I have no idea which of those 4 companies I listed was responsible for that element of the work. Thank you, sir.
Very well. We come then to question 16. The Deputy Gardener will ask of the Chief Minister. Deputy.
So before I'm asking my question, can I raise a point of when during the Minister's responses they're saying they will follow up with the information, what is possibility to have this information made public? Because as a States members, we receive this follow-up information for our oral question, but public cannot see this extra information. So
well,
would it be published?
I think the short position to that is the undertaking to follow up is a political commitment made on the part of the Minister, and it's to follow up by providing an answer, in my view, to the person who's raised the question. Those answers, on the basis, though, that if the Minister had had the information available to them, so they could have answered the question and didn't need to follow up, it would have been available then to the public because it would have been Hansarded and recorded in the normal way. It seems to me that unless there is a reason why that information can't be provided, it should normally be provided in a publishable form. But I'm not able to assist further if that does assist.
Thank you. So back to the question. Will the Chief Minister provide detail on what progress, if any, has been made to provide an overall government IT strategy and advise when it will be finalised?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. An overarching IT strategy for the government is under development and due to be finalised later this year, so June 25 is the estimated completion. The project has taken on board the groundwork of previous draft IT strategies started by Deputy Wickenden and then worked on further by Deputy Curtis, and refocused primarily on what could be referred to as fixing the basics, getting the basics right, which is what we need to do in our IT estate. The aim of this work is to ensure we have a robust IT infrastructure and consistent processes to underpin our various IT systems. This will not only improve consistency and efficiency, sir, but it will also help to reduce and or mitigate risk. The work streams include focus on IT networks, IT applications, cloud and data centers, artificial intelligence, and the way we use and manage data, sir. Once completed, the strategy will guide key decisions and future investment. The project has been progressing well, and last month the Digital Services team started consulting local digital companies operating in the island, sir. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Absolutely. I'm grateful for the Chief Minister for a commitment that the strategy will be published this year, and the details of the strategy is welcome. Would the Chief Minister advise if the strategy with all prioritisation will be published in time to the budget debate, so we can see alignments between strategy and prioritisation and what we will have in the budget for the next year?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Well, we come to question 17. The Deputy Renniff will ask of the Minister for Health and Social Services. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Further to his response to written question 18/2025, will the Minister explain why he does not plan to hold a public consultation on his proposed reorganisation of health services?
Minister.
So, thank the Deputy for his question. And I have to confess to being a little confused because I think my response to the written question 18/2025 is particularly well detailed. So I'm not at all sure what it is that the Deputy considers should be put out for public consultation. And it may be helpful to me to be able to answer the question comprehensively if he'd be kind enough to explain exactly what form that would take, sir.
So
Yes, I mean, the question has been allowed in its current form. It's been met with the question. It may be easier, but are you not in a position to answer the question as put, Minister?
Well, are we really going to go and consult with 100,000 people about internal changes? I've tried to make some inquiries as to similar situations, and in similar situations to this, it wouldn't go to public consultation. That's why I simply ask if the Deputy would be kind enough to explain, given that I did answer the written question comprehensively, what part of that he thinks is appropriate to go to public consultation. We've got two pieces of work. One is work that we've already done, and it seems to me to be perfectly in order to have done, and that's transferring policy and certain other areas into the health service. And we've looked to appoint a director of finance and digital services and HR and hopefully in time procurement. What part of that should we be taking to the public? We're looking to put a board in place, a partnership board, and I'm just mindful that under the previous government we introduced an advisory board, and I don't recall Deputy Renniff standing up and saying that should go to public consultation. So perhaps the Deputy would be kind enough to explain what it is about this scenario that's different to the last. So.
No, Minister, it's not for the ministerial responder to ask a question unless it is an obscure question in the first place. May I, if I, as the chair is speaking, perhaps you don't not speak, Minister, at this moment. It seems to me that what you are in effect saying, and please correct me if I am wrong, is that in your view, and it is backed up by the information that you have provided in answer to the written question, there are no areas which you think would be appropriate for public consultation. Is that a correct characterisation of your answer, or is it not?
It is indeed, and I apologise for not putting it as succinctly as you have, sir.
Do you have a supplementary question to that answer?
Yes, sir, I do. The reason I think that we would want this to go to public consultation is it is the most fundamental reorganisation of health service delivery certainly that I can remember. And therefore it might be appropriate. And in particular, it might be appropriate because on 31st July 2024, the Minister wrote to the new hospital review panel saying that, and I quote, "It is anticipated that these proposals for structural reform will be published for public consultation in Q4 2024. 6 months ago, a consultation was planned. Now it is not. What has changed?"
Minister.
Well, I have to give the Deputy points for finding that. I don't know how I come to have said that it was going for public consultation. It was probably an error to have said that, and for which I apologise, because I cannot see an instance why I would have suggested that. But I make the point that it isn't appropriate for public consultation, and if I've made an error in saying that, perhaps it was what I was meaning to say was it would be there for public consumption rather than consultation, because I cannot think of a point in time at which I'd have thought it was an appropriate course of action. So,
well, Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. At the same public hearing to the Public Accounts Committee from the Chief Executive, I'm reading through the transcript, it is a policy under development, the organizational concept of which we try to integrate health services. Does the Minister consider this work, as the Chief Executive, consider policy under development?
Well, sir, it's under development until such time as it's all through. So you don't reach a point in time where you suddenly make an arbitrary decision to stop talking to people. So it is constantly under development and it's going through various stages. So that's correct.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Absolutely. Thank you, Minister, for confirming that reorganization of the health service is the policy under development. According to the guidelines, any policy under development within the government of Jersey, when the public money is involved, require public consultation. Does Minister agree with the government guidelines, or he would like to change guidelines?
Without access to those guidelines, as we speak, sir, I can't say that's not a fact, but it's not appropriate under the circumstances. I can certainly take a look at those guidelines and see where we go from here. I still don't think it's appropriate, sir.
Well, final supplementary, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. I think it's the Assembly would usually regard it as entirely unremarkable for there to be a public consultation on some matters that are so fundamental to the delivery of health services in the island. The Minister has confirmed that he hasn't asked his former chief officer about these these changes, even though he is paying him quite a lot of money to be an advisor. He hasn't read the government's guidelines on consultations, and yet he is absolutely sure that he shouldn't be holding a public consultation. Will he please review his attitude to consultation and consider whether the public might have an interest in hearing more about this and involving themselves in the consultation process?
Well, sir, I'd like the Deputy to withdraw his comment that I've not consulted with the former Chief Executive. That is not correct, and I don't think it's fair to say so. In terms of reviewing my approach to this, not at all. What I will be doing, and I phoned the Policy Department actually after the question from Deputy Gardner, and suggested that we organise another briefing, because there seems to be a relatively small number of members that seem unable to get their head around what's being proposed. And what we're actually doing is just trying to support health professionals to provide a better service. And the nature of the questioning this morning, you'd think that there's something criminal about what's happening, not that we're actually trying to improve things for patients. So I do intend to organise another briefing for members so that we can get matters a lot clearer. But I don't intend to change the course of events going forward. Thank you, sir.
Very well. That brings all of the questions to an end. There were two questions deferred to the end for Deputy Ozef. He is not present in the Assembly. Once I close the question period, that must bring the matter to an end, and as if by magic. Morning, Deputy. Are you ready to answer the two questions?
If I may just have a few moments just to collect my things, so please, if I may.
Well, yes,
I'm not ready at this.
I could quite happily look at my papers for a minute or two if members would agree.
I apologise, so I'm one of those people that deals with some of the health issues that have been referred to earlier. Thank you, sir. Will the Minister, thank you for the forbearance of you and the Assembly, sir.
So very well, we're now starting with question one
yes,
on the order paper. Yes, please do ask your question.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister kindly advise whether steps, if any, are being taken by the government to investigate and address the high costs of food and groceries in the island and the disparity with other jurisdictions? And will he explain what support, if any, is available to islanders struggling with these escalating costs? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Sir, I'll start by taking the last part of the question first. Will he explain what support, if any, is available to islanders struggling with escalating costs? That is a question I believe better placed asked of the Social Security Minister rather than the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. But sir, with regard to cost of living and the cost of food and groceries in the island, so research in 2023 by the JCRA and Frontier Economics identified a number of island-specific factors which influence the higher cost of groceries in Jersey when compared to the UK or mainland Europe. We also understand and recognise the value that competition can provide in ensuring pricing efficiency and mitigating inflation. And with that in mind, sir, the Department for the Economy is working to deliver updates to the competition law. Additionally, the new concession agreement for ferry services removes artificial barriers to competition, as well as placing caps on price increases for future years, the next 20 years, so that islanders are not exposed to significant increases as we have seen in recent years. The government, sir, is committed to aiding islanders with the cost of living, and the Deputy will, I'm sure, be familiar with the measures taken by the government under the affordable living section of the Common Strategic Policy.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. I am not alone, sir, in, I think, asking ministers in government about the what is regarded and called in this week's Economist the cockroach that is the problem of inflation and the real and underlying historic issues that we have in cost of living. Is the minister able to give some public information in maybe a written response or some briefing for states members about exactly what are the issues that he says and refers to kindly and rightly about what the JCRA is actually doing and the government is doing, not to put money back into people's pockets by way of more taxpayers' funding, but actually dealing with the underlying costs of inflation, which are rising, as I've been asking a number of occasions.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I mean, it is interesting. Obviously, inflation in the right amount is seen economically as a good. If you were to have deflation, it is usually seen as a bad. So looking to previous UK Chancellors of the Exchequer, they suggested a 2% inflation rate was the target for the Bank of England at the time. And 2% is seen as generally the appropriate level of inflation to ensure you have a growing economy. Jersey's RPI at most recent release was 2.5%, sir. And so I don't think can be argued to be excessive inflation. We have, of course, in the past few years, seen excessive inflation as high as 10% in the island, sir. And there's no doubt that that was excessive, but was clearly driven by off-island, in the main, by off-island factors. So I think the context is very important. And right now, the figures we have suggest that inflation is not where it has been over the past few years and has reduced significantly. The government will continue to work on that, sir. And I will continue through the cost of living group, especially, to ensure that the government does maintain a view on inflation, and I believe should seek to mitigate potential risks. I myself, sir, am concerned about potential damage that could be caused to the island and cost of living in the island should the UK economy continue to deteriorate, and particularly in terms of valuing of the pound, because any significant devaluation in the pound in the UK would lead to significant cost rises in Jersey, and I think that's something that we should have on our radar, sir.
Well, we come to question now 14 that the same deputy will ask of the Minister for Housing. Yes, the Minister for Housing.
I was hoping for a final supplementary on that, sir, but anyway.
No, the way it works is that if no other member asks, there's no final supplementary.
Very good, sir. To the Minister for Housing, then, if I may. Given the decline in property transactions, affordability issues for first-time buyers and challenges for islanders aspiring to upsize to family homes, alongside with the prolonged stagnation across the wider housing market, is the Minister's assessment that urgent interventions are now necessary to stimulate housing activity? And if so, will the Minister kindly advise what measures, if any, are under consideration to stimulate the sale and rental housing market? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I don't think that I agree that urgent interventions are necessary in the way that I think the Deputy might be suggesting or alluding to. So whilst the current layout of the housing transaction market poses some challenges for some people. It also poses opportunities for others, and with every potential intervention, that may well exacerbate things or reverse things, so that those who currently have opportunities lose those, and for the sake of alleviating those who currently face challenges. It's a very complex thing to do, and measures can have unintended consequences if you're not careful on them. So my view is that at this moment in time, we're experiencing housing market correction, where in the years leading up to this point, house prices were rising at such unsustainable levels and severely affecting housing affordability for many islanders in Jersey through a bubble, that is now being corrected, and with prices going down as they did last year, they are getting closer to the normal levels where they otherwise would have been were it not for that bubble. That, I'm sure, poses challenges to some in the moment, but it also poses opportunities to others who may now find that housing is more affordable for them than it otherwise was before. And I think that there's a degree of that correction that ought to be welcome, and I wouldn't want to implement urgent interventions that put that at risk.
Supplemental question.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister not accept at all that the statistics which I have been reviewing in recent days, right up to date, that the housing transactions in Jersey are at and remain at historic lows, particularly in relation to buy-to-lets and the rental market, which is seeing an escalating rental price increase as a result? Does he not accept that there is an unintended, maybe, consequence of the 3% surcharge on buy-to-let, which is completely stagnating the rental market, and that is having detrimental effects on renters who are seeing rents rising, and the statistics prove it? Will he not at least accept that?
I won't, sir, because the statistics prove no such thing. If he has obtained statistics that Statistics Jersey do not have, I would love to see them. But, sir, as it currently stands, we do not collect data on actual rents. I want to fix that, and my proposed residential tenancy law will get to that. The only rental data that Statistics Jersey collect is advertised rents, which are falling, the exact opposite of what Deputy Joseph has just suggested. He referred to the 3% stamp duty surcharge as causing an unintended consequence of fewer buy-to-let purchasers. No, sir, that was precisely the intended consequence of it. And whilst we have seen the proportion within transactions of buy-to-let purchasers going down, the proportion of first-time buyer purchasers has gone up, which is exactly the directions that I wanted that policy to influence, and it appears to have done that.
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, so would the Minister accept that there is indeed a counter view to the one put forward by Deputy Joseph, and agree that in many respects, as he suggests, the policies are working, in that after a long period of unsustainable rises in property prices and rents, both have fallen, although they haven't yet reached the levels of affordability that they were in the past. And therefore it might be better for the industry to adapt to the current situation, including the buy-to-let stamp duty surcharge, rather than try and return to the previous model, which didn't work for renters or for home buyers.
So I completely agree with him, and in particular the last sentence he used there, which is that the situation we were in a few years ago was dire and hurting many, many islanders because of what they were seeing with their own eyes on housing affordability, which is why so many of them were losing hope in a prosperous future in Jersey and giving up on the island. That, sir, could not carry on forever, otherwise the island would have been doomed. So I appreciate that a change in the landscape can be difficult for people who got used to conditions as it was previously, but it is right, sir, that islanders who want to own their own homes or have homes that are at the very least affordable to rent, their needs ought to be seriously considered by the government. And I think that if I could try to be kind and helpful to those in the industry who keep bringing up the 3% stamp duty surcharge, the Assembly's had that debate and it led to a conclusive result. I think that it would be more productive to spend time focusing on other things that could potentially be done to alleviate things and not pin their hopes on a policy that actually is doing what it was meant to do and which there isn't a mandate to change it at this point.
Supplemental question? Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. The Minister, in response to a written question, 61, provided some details on the number of properties that have been sold by Andium, which I believe accords with his intentions to provide access to affordable homes. Could he explain why then, since September last year, there has only been one sale?
Yes, sir, because there was only one available to sell at that point. The homes that Andium sell, they are not a permanently consistent stream with numbers being equal every month. They fluctuate very significantly, and that will depend on multiple things. It will depend on new developments opening. So when the Limes was made available last year, there was a spike in homes being sold. When Maison Les Arches is open in the next few months, there will be a big spike of purchases there. I'm particularly looking forward to that development. But so we have quieter months, and there are months where none get sold or very few get sold, and that's perfectly normal in our system.
Supplementary question, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister be in a position to tell us what projections or what forecasts he has for the sale of affordable housing?
Well, I mentioned Maison Les Arches, sir. That is, the first block of that is due to be done in the next few months. I walk past it frequently and it looks absolutely fantastic, and Andium's advertising campaign is particularly strong with that one. That will be 54 homes from that first block, and I believe that we're also looking at 131 homes for sale at the next project that Andium will be completing in the following months after that, which is Le Grand Douai.
Final supplementary, Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. I wonder whether or not the Minister would agree before the next Assembly to have a meeting with all those buyers and sellers of properties that are currently suffering because of his policies and because of what he has explained in his answers, and that he actually may hear from them directly quite the turmoil and difficulty that the people that are wanting to get into home ownership and those that want to move on or out of home ownership are experiencing. Would you agree to meet those people? And I'm happy to have that meeting in public if necessary.
So I would be absolutely delighted to have such an opportunity to do so. He referred to all of the people. I doubt that it's possible to identify all of these people, but if Deputy Joseph wants to volunteer to facilitate that kind of meeting, I'd be more than happy to attend it, sir, because I have absolute confidence in our strategy to provide more affordable homes for people to purchase, better conditions in the rental sector, and, sir, I would wager that we'd walk out of that meeting with the Deputy not quite thinking it had gone to plan.
That brings an end to questions without notice. We now move to ministerial questions with notice. The first period is for the Minister for Children and Families. Johnny Tarbes, St Peter.
Thank you, sir.
Is that your question?
He is the Minister.
Ah, right. Deputy Aye.
Thank you, sir. I was waiting for the Minister's question.
Yes. So were we all. Yes, so were we all.
Will the Minister advise what actions he is taking to support parents and children in respect of online safety? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. No question this time. So, yes, this is a really important aspect of the work of Children's Services in conjunction with education. The support that we're currently giving parents regard to online safety was updated in 2024. That had originally come about because a report had been instigated by the Chief Minister John Le Fondre, so that was some time ago. On the gov.je website, you can find practical advice and guidance to parents. It's including how to talk to children about online risks, parental controls are available, screen time and eye health, mobile phones, and that is extremely topical at the moment, although there are good aspects to mobile phones. The threat from AI, which of course is a new factor, and this shows how things develop quite quickly with regard to how we provide that support. There is also help through education. The schools often have their own websites, and we also provide support through the youth service working with children, and of course encouraging children to raise concerns themselves. And those are the primary ways that we're achieving this.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister be conforming to the UK Online Safety Act, or will he be bringing forward his own legislation? Thank you, sir.
Well, the legislation will be brought forward actually through the Economic Development Minister's or Sustainable Economic Development's office. However, it is very much supported by Children's Services, and we are working with them. We are not part of the UK Act, which has recently come in, and I thoroughly support that because, in fact, if we're part of that Act, it would be difficult to subsequently make changes in what is a fast-moving world. Our own Act would have principles based on our duty of care. That's the government's chief role in this, tackling online children abuse, tackling legal but harmful content. There can be legal content that's harmful. However, what we need to ensure that it's not without teeth, so there needs to be strong investigative powers and criminal and financial sanctions, and those are the things that I would wish to see within our own Act. Thank you.
Constable.
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister advise what progress has been made in setting up the Children in Care Council? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. The Children in Care Council is an important part of the Corporate Parenting Board, and it has taken some time for this to gain traction. However, we have now given responsibility to this to our independent reviewing officer service, which functions separately from Children's Services work. Work has commenced with pace to build a participation plan for the development of the council. And we're achieving this through a series of informed drop-ins to allow young people the chance to ask questions about the council and how they can play a part. We also have Come Dine With Me events where children can meet staff, and a Children in Care celebration event of talent and achievements, again, where we will ask children for their views on how the council should be formed. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Constable?
Yes, please. Could the Minister say that it's very well that he set it up, but just what future plans do you have for the Children in Care Council?
I recently had the opportunity to visit Medway Council and to join their corporate parenting board when they met. There we had a representative from their Children in Council, Children in Care Council, who had undertaken a review of a subject and had come to the council in effect to present that. And formed, and formed a very active part within the corporate parenting board. What I was also told was that on another project that the Children Council had looked at was inspections of premises where children in care were living, where they formed their own small inspection group independently of other inspections and came back to the corporate parenting board with a report. And those are the sort of things that I would like to see the Children in Care Council doing, and also for members of the Children in Care Council to ultimately be members of the Corporate Parenting Board and play a part in running that board. Thank you.
Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister tell us, please, what the capacity of greenfields is and whether that has increased in 2024?
Well, of course, we never actually divulged the numbers of children actually in Greenfield. Greenfield was built for 8 children, and what I can say is that there are under 8 children in Greenfield at present.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. My question wasn't about the number of children in greenfields, it was the capacity of greenfields and whether that capacity has been increased in 2024.
What I can say is that, yes, the capacity has increased. That has resulted from custodial sentences over which Children's Services has no control, and also in conjunction with that, children who are held without bail. But I obviously can't give specific numbers.
Minister, there may be some element of confusion. I think the question is, how many can it take, not how many is it currently taking? Has the number it can take, potentially, whether occupied or not?
I did actually say it had increased, and that was the question.
So the capacity has increased. In other words, the number of available beds.
The number of available beds has increased, but not to the full capacity of Greenfield. In theory, it has a capacity of 8. In theory, it has a capacity of 8 children.
You indicated in your... I'm sorry to sound like I'm cross-examining you, but I think there is a genuine misunderstanding, a misalignment between the question and the answer. My understanding of Deputy Miles's question does not relate to how many are there, whether the numbers have increased. It's how many potentially, what is the total possible capacity of greenfields, whether occupied or not, and has it increased in the last 12 months?
Well, the short answer to that is, of course, that if I was to answer in a strict sense, it was built with 8 units, 8 beds. It still has 8 units. However, of course, there's a difference between registered beds and the actual capacity.
I'm afraid that's as much as I feel able to intervene in
yes,
the answer.
so has the number, I think the question should have been, had the number of registered beds increased? And I could truthfully answer to that is that, yes, they have.
That was your supplementary. Deputy Catherine Curtis.
Thank you, sir. In our recent public hearing, the Minister stated the intention for the Children and Adolescent Mental Health Service to be moving to a 7-day per week service this month. So could the Minister confirm that's now happening?
Thank you. Could I just ask the Deputy Curtis if you could just repeat that, because I missed some of that, sorry.
Could the Minister confirm whether CAMS is now a 7-day a week service?
Yes, I'm pleased to say that it is a 7-day week service from 9 till 5 p.m. and that we'll shortly move to an 8 to 8 p.m. service. So yes, in April we hope to extend that 7-day service to additional hours. Thank you.
Supplemental question.
Yes, thank you. Could the Minister confirm whether there's been any difficulty in recruiting any extra staff for this expanded service?
I would say that I don't think specifically for this service there's been an issue. Is there an overall issue with recruiting staff? The answer to that is yes. If I look at the numbers for CAMS, we have a vacant headcount across CAMS of 31 staff, but despite that, we have increased the service to 7 days a week. But there is there's a headcount of 104. We've got vacancies of 31, of which 12 are covered by agency. So across the UK, Jersey's not, it's not unique to Jersey. It is difficult to recruit staff for CAMS.
Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister acknowledge the widespread concern of parents that I have spoken to in my constituency of St Saviour and those coming to St Saviour in their huge numbers to drop their children at the schools here, of the impact of smartphones on children's learning and safety in schools? Has he sought to gauge the depth of this concern, and does he accept that continuing action and discussion must give way to at least some firm action by government?
I do share the concern of smartphones. Of course, you know, smartphones are very often given to the children by their parents. But I very much do accept the issue, and we talked earlier about online safety, and of course, phones play a major part in that. I think the Education Minister may well correct me, but I believe in most schools, phones are no longer permitted in the classroom. A large part of children's time actually is not in our care. It is in their parents' care, and that's why quite a bit of our work focuses on educating parents on how they can take greater control of those phones. Thank you.
Supplementary question?
Yes, sir. I'm grateful for the Minister's appreciation of the concern. I wonder whether, because I'm not sure that it is correct to say that there is a policy. If there is, it's here and there, and it's not being properly done, and the issue of peer pressure with kids having smartphones. Would it be helpful, sir, if the Assembly actually determined that there should be a trial ban for smartphones in schools on a trial basis, starting pretty well immediately in all schools in the island? Would he find that helpful in order to ascertain whether or not smartphones should be dinged? He's clearly worried about it. Other parents are. What's he going to do about it? Would he agree a trial if necessary?
I have concerns. I'm not sure that blanket bans are necessarily the right way forward. I know not just in schools, but Australia wants a blanket ban on certain aspects of the use of mobile phones. And when I spoke to a member of the UNCRC when they were in Jersey, they didn't support that. As a way forward, that blanket bans are not necessarily effective and may not achieve the right results. Of course, within schools, that's a matter for the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning, who will be facing Quan after me. Thank you.
Can I just ask that, my question wasn't answered. I asked whether or not he would find it helpful if a trial ban was actually considered by this Assembly so that we could have a clear direction.
Well, I think the answer...
He didn't answer the issue of trial.
Well, the deputy answer, the Minister's answer was that he was far from sure that there was such a benefit to have from a trial ban. But if I
yes, I'm quite. That is my answer. That I would need convincing that a trial ban was the right way forward. So at this point, I wouldn't support that.
So can I ask a point of order, sir?
Yes, of course.
There was an interchange earlier trying to clarify an answer.
I'm adding injury time, if that's your question.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yes, I'm going to add at least a minute's injury time to the question period available.
So could we have some VAR as well, please, on some of the answers?
Deputy Wall.
Thank you, sir. The Minister previously committed to bring professional standards for foster cares, including pay. What progress has been made?
On foster carers, we have improved the packages. That is certainly part of our reform programme. And looked at not just pay but the overall package. I very much appreciate the work that foster care has done, and I don't think anybody could say that I haven't or won't make the very best efforts to ensure that they are recognised with the appropriate package. But yes, we have made progress on that and introduced changes.
Have a time for a supplementary question from you and then one additional question from someone else.
Yes, thank you, sir. I was just reading, what feedback has he had from the Foster Carers Association on this?
I think we've had some, no package is perfect, but we have had some positive feedback on that. There are always exceptions where, as we changed over, in fact, from one package to the other, certain people fell into different areas, particularly, with specialised care. But on the overall, I have had, fairly positive comments.
Final question will be from the Conitab St Lawrence.
Thank you, sir. We know that if the Aviemore site is sold, an endowment fund to benefit care experienced islanders will be created from the sale proceeds. And we are told that the Minister is considering that the management of this fund will be handed to a third-party administrator. And will he advise the Assembly, please, who he is considering to manage that fund?
At this point, I don't believe we have specifically chosen anybody. I mean, that is what is considered the best way forward. But at this point, I'm not aware that we have chosen anybody. But placing it within a third party, we think, is the best way forward. It would be inappropriate, I think, for either the government or children's services to be deciding on how those funds should be allocated and on individual cases. Thank you.
Yes, please. Thank you, sir. Supplementary is, will there be a right of appeal for the decision-making of this third-party agency?
I thank you for the question. I would certainly like to see a right of appeal, but do I honestly know whether that's the case? I don't at this stage, but I'm happy to get that information. Thank you.
Very well, that brings the period of questions allowing for injury time, no VAR, to a close. The next period is for the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning, Deputy Tadley.
Thank you, sir. Sir, the United Nations Convention of the Rights of the Child, Article 12, says that opinions of children and young people should be considered when governments, assemblies make decisions about things that involve them. With regard to the forthcoming debate on electoral reform, would the Minister state whether he thinks that children, so we know that young people can vote from the age of 16, they're still considered children at that age, whether they have been consulted sufficiently on any changes that we'll be making potentially to our electoral system? And if not, could he say how he thinks that they might be consulted so that we can hear their voice in this very important area?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Deputy for his question. Really interesting, actually, because the simple answer is no. I don't think children have ever been consulted on our electoral system. And young people, and it's a very good idea to do exactly that, sir. I think the consultation I've focused on has been more around education, I have to say. I will offer the Deputy a model. I'm about to start some focus groups in schools about post-16 education. We've written to all heads to get young people together, and myself and Deputy Alves will be going in and talking to people about what their views are there. So there is a model for doing that, and I think it would be a very interesting thing to do. I would obviously, sir, pass the ball on to PPC, who might want to be involved in doing that, but I would certainly support it in schools. It's a very good idea, sir.
Supplemental, Deputy.
So I understand that young people were consulted about when the decision to allow 16-year-olds to vote, something which I think the States Assembly was in a very progressive state of mind, and I think needs to be congratulated for. They were consulted then, so it seems obvious that if we're changing our system, perhaps going back to a system which is 70 or 80 years old, they need to be consulted on whether they think that's also fit for the future, because after all, it is them who will be inheriting the new system. Does the Minister agree?
So yes, I do. And I think the progression for 16-year-olds voting, it's nice to get that in the public domain, 16-year-olds can vote. I think they need to remember that. And so that may help with our engagement with politics as well, to say, look, you can vote, there may be a change to the electoral system, let's get some consultation going with young people, because we consult widely on many other things. So yes, and there are mechanisms to do that, sir, because young people are in schools and colleges and very accessible, even via a simple survey. So it'd be interesting to talk to perhaps PPC about that. So yes, good idea today. So thank you.
Deputy
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister update the Assembly on his plans for a new school in St Helier on the gasworks site? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. And I do thank the Deputy for his question. The problem we have with the gasworks site is that we don't own it yet. However, I am very ambitious and hopeful that we may have some news on that sooner rather than later. I'm also very superstitious, sir, so I don't want to ruin something by making statements, but I assure the Assembly, as soon as there is any information obtaining the site, I will let the Assembly know. But then we move on to the work that, and some work has gone on planning. There have been things produced in the previous 2 years which aren't lost. We've got a very good idea what the site would look like, what it would be used for, and then we can move, I think, rapidly. I would be honest with the Deputy, sir, and I think the best we can hope for is to have planning permission in place before the next election, so it doesn't become an issue and can be got on with whoever is in this Assembly after the next election. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Minister for his response. Due to the delay, will there not have been an increase in the cost of the site? Because obviously Andiam have not managed to do anything with it for a number of years, and does he feel responsible for that delay? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm not sure about the increase in cost of the site because of its usage. Am I responsible for the delay? I'm Minister, so I'm responsible. I take my responsibilities seriously. However, I would also say it was me who brought the change to the island plan some years ago to have this site, and previous governments have not acted on it at all in the way that we need to. So what I would say is if we can get the site in our hands, start planning permission moving forward, then I would be pleased to come back and say, actually, that's my responsibility and I've taken it very seriously. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Alex Curtis? Deputy Catherine Curtis. I'm sorry, you'll guess the mistake I made then.
In a letter dated the 20th of December, the Minister wrote that a meeting was scheduled for mid-January to review progress on the plans for schools to hold spare auto-adrenaline injectors, which could save children's lives. Could the Minister provide an update on the progress?
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for the question. The Deputy might remember when I attended the recent quarterly hearing with the panel less than 4 weeks ago, I advised I'd written to the Minister for Health and Social Services to seek support in making the necessary legislative change, not easy to say, to enable schools to access, I would refer to them so as auto-adrenaline injectors, and there is a reason, it's not just me being a pedant, is that there are other brands available, and that will probably be what appears in the legislation. So there is a point to making that. I'm pleased to advise the Minister for Health that the Minister is very supportive of progress in the work, and initial contact has been made with law officers. And I can update the Deputy, if I can get I won't read the email now, but an email at 9:52 today, we received back that actually the law officer work can continue. That actually a lot of good work has gone on there already, and it's perhaps not as difficult as we were concerned about. So I'm trying to get my laptop over so I can read. So, although they do not form part of the government's legislative plan, I believe that we can proceed with this as quickly as possible. But unfortunately, I can't give a definitive date today. But yes, that's been acted on. The agreement is there, and the work is in progress, which I think is a good step forward. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question? Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. I wonder if the Minister could update on progress with the youth centre at the Ann Street Brewery site.
Thank you, sir. Simple answer is that's not actually my remit, so I can't. However, quite happy to, because being politically opportunistic. That was the second amendment I brought to the Bridge and Island Plan for a youth facility. And it's really nice that we're now actually getting on and getting one because it is desperately needed in the centre of St Helier. So I sort of left that because that's delegated elsewhere, and as the Deputy knows, it's very busy taking on these roles. But I am fully supportive of it. I believe that plans are in place. I believe that there are a good way forward. Perhaps may I suggest a written question to the Minister involved and we can get an answer together. But other than that, so I'm afraid I can't answer any more than that. I do apologise to the Deputy.
Supplemental question. Deputy Jean.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister outline how Skills Jersey collaborates with local businesses, and does he believe this partnership effectively meets the needs of both businesses and job seekers?
Yes, thank you, sir. Yes, I can say to the Deputy, to outline, it's quite an in-depth process, actually, the way in which Skills Jersey do liaise with businesses. Yes, I do believe they do so effectively, sir. We have, I think it's, I want to give the correct number. I looked it up and memorised, and it's gone straight out of my head. There are 456 apprentices currently enrolled on the island. And I think sometimes, sir, we have discussions around apprenticeships in contact with Skills Jersey and businesses which are absolute. It's either perfect or it's nothing at all. So I want to change that dialogue because actually there's a lot of good work going on. Is it perfect? Probably no. Can it be improved? Yes, absolutely. I have a meeting on Friday with Skills Jersey to talk about the future planning and the way we're going to act on that. So I think the work that's done with Skills Jersey is good. Can it be improved? Yes, but we always try to be a self-improving department, which is a feature of a good department. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy Jean.
Yes, thank you, sir. And I do believe, but the Minister can correct me, that Skills Jersey is not just for the apprenticeships or those who are just leaving school, but also for those who are seeking to maybe change jobs and get requalified in different areas if they are coming back into the workforce or finding new jobs. And just wondering if the Minister could maybe address the issue at the moment that we're hearing a lot about, the lack of trust in government, which could potentially discourage islanders from going to Skills Jersey to access the services, and what kind of specific steps he could take to rebuild that kind of confidence and improve engagement to those kind of more the job seekers who potentially feel that Skills Jersey wouldn't give them what they need to rethink their jobs in the future.
Thanks, thank you, Deputy. A couple of things there. First of all, yes, I drew us into apprenticeships, but the Deputy is absolutely right. There's a lot of work for those seeking employment. I've spoken to a number of people myself about emails from people saying thanks for the work that's happened with Skills Jersey. I don't agree with the Deputy that there is this lack of trust in Skills Jersey. I think Skills Jersey has got a good reputation. I think it is seen to help a great deal. And I would like to take this opportunity to say, members of the public, if you do have a lack of trust in governance, whatever that may be, don't extend that to Skills Jersey. They're there to help. They were there to help you seek employment. They were here to help you with training, with mentoring, with providing the appropriate things, helping you decide which of your skills you can utilise the best. And I think there's a good service there, as there is with all of our career services in schools and beyond in colleges, sir. So I don't agree with there's a lack of trust with Skills Jersey. And indeed, sir, I would up their image as much as I can to the members of our island. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. When is the Minister planning to publish his policy on student funding for higher education where students choose distance learning courses?
Yeah, thank you, sir. There's some work going on there, and I think I may have something very soon. I'm hoping by the end of this month. It's been a very nuanced piece of work because when you look, sir, at distance learning, you have to be very specific in what you want to do and look at all the knock-on effects. And the work that's been going actually has been very, very skilled, and I want to compliment the officer who's been on that work actually. In terms of higher education funding, sir, The final steps of the law drafting will soon be able to confirm the changes to the order that will, from the 1st of September 2025, produce a 5.2% increase in income thresholds, 2.5% uplift in maintenance grants, and a 3.1% increase in the maximum tuition fee grant. And I'm hoping that that can be signed very, very soon, if not by the end of this week. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary question?
Yes, please, sir. Will the Minister tell us if there'll be a differential in the maintenance grant for students who choose to do distance learning courses and remain on island, and students who go off to the UK or elsewhere for a more traditional education?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, sir, thank you, and thank the Deputy. You know, so I got all these notes, and I tried to not use notes because I try and memorise them, but you can't memorise everything. I believe that that's exactly where we're heading. But if I could just ask the Deputy's indulgence for a few more weeks, and I will get the information to you as soon as I possibly can. I think that is the right thing to do. The differential has been too great, but it comes hand in hand with what we mean by distance learning. Because and I've said this before and I'll say it again, I think I've said it to the panel, distance learning is not just an online course. It is learning at a distance from the university in a particular way with a particular level of support, which is a very, very nuanced and skilled way to learn. Therefore, it does need that equality with other forms of learning, and I would support that. So.
Right, Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. When will the terms and conditions, for teachers be completed, and when will the terms and conditions for teaching assistants be agreed?
Thank you, sir. I don't need notes for this one. So the teaching assistants is going out to consultation now, and there are meetings. In fact, I am attending one of the meetings to see how that is actually conveyed to teaching assistants. They've been through an entire process. I had a briefing on it the other day, so that's ending very, very soon, and I think that's been a very constructive and useful process. Indeed, so one of the changes I believe that teaching assistants and others that work in schools will be referred to as educational assistants. I've probably got the wrong, I apologise to the Deputy, I've probably got the wrong term here, but I believe it's educational assistants, which recognises better the things that are happening. Teachers' terms and conditions, there's been some very positive work on that. Moving forward with the trade unions. We have a very positive relationship at the moment that we're building on, and that work is ongoing, but there are specific things coming forward which I hope we can act on, particularly in terms of trying to make, and what I want to do as soon as I can, is to increase planning, preparation and assessment time for staff to lower that workload. I don't think we've really addressed workload for the teaching profession for many, many, many years, and we have to make a step somewhere. And I believe that I would have the support of Council of Ministers in doing so. I hope that satisfies the Deputy.
I'm afraid, allowing for 3 or 4 seconds, that brings the period of questions for this Minister to an end. The next question period is for the Chief Minister. Deputy Renniff.
Thank you, sir. The Chief Minister referenced earlier that last week the Environment Minister revised planning guidance for large homes over 3,000 square feet, removing the presumption against development. The report that accompanied the decision made clear that when the limit was introduced, there was a public consultation which found, quote, overwhelming support for the 3,000 square foot limit. Can he explain why there was no consultation when it came to removing the limit?
Chief Minister.
So I would have to refer that question to the Planning and Environment Minister.
So the reason I asked the question is that consultation and lack of it is an issue at the moment. The Chief Minister had referenced that very guidance changing in his answer to a previous question about regulation. Can I put it this way then? The report that accompanied the decision also made clear that the only reason the change was being made was following pressure from the head of high-value residency engagement. In particular, he referenced 3 clients who, quote, have projects that are directly concerned by the 3,000 square foot limit. So how does the Chief Minister justify taking instructions from 3 high-value residents whilst excluding the public from the decision-making process?
Well, that's news to me, sir. We do not take instructions from high-value residents. There are strict criteria to the entry of that. But it struck me, I wasn't aware there was significant public consultation on the introduction of the 3,000 square foot rule. And I'm going to have to refer to the Planning and Environment Minister for that, sir. But I do agree with that. I thought the 3,000 square foot rule, sir, is not just relating to a high net worth individuals, far from it, sir. But I think it was in an era, so where we're trying to encourage development and provide support for our construction sector, it was perhaps a little too severe and restrictive. Generally, so 3,000 square foot isn't a huge amount of space for a modern house.
Deputy Joseph.
So I previously asked the Chief Minister, which he's kindly said that action was taken concerning the fuel farm lease and the long-term arrangements given the trigger clauses in the previous lease. Is he able to publicly confirm an update on what has been done in relation to the fuel farm and those particularly important trigger clauses, including tenders, in order that the cost of living may be constrained in the longer term?
Yeah, thank you, sir. That's an ongoing negotiation. The infrastructure Minister and team are working on that. The time limit has been extended to the end of April to allow more time for detailed discussions, and I'm happy to provide, or I think the Minister will provide regular updates to members on that.
Supplemental?
Just very briefly, sir, I wonder, I'm really grateful for the Chief Minister taking action so quickly on something that was missed, it appears. I just worry, and could he give some comfort, that it is possible to actually deal with the issues that need to be taken by that deadline that he set in April?
Yes, the discussions are taking place, are diligent, sir, and I understand exploring every detail, very mindful of the long-term impacts of making the wrong decision. So I am reassured by the Minister and the team that we are following those guidelines to ensure we make the right decision in line with some of the concerns the deputies raised for many years. So this has been an ongoing situation that has been restricted by entering into long leases without proper consideration. So I'm assured by the team that the due consideration will take place. Thank you.
Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. In a BBC interview broadcast on the 31st of January, the Chief Minister said that Project Baitwater had been in progress for nearly a year and its proposals were due to be published in around March time, which would provide answers and a proposal to deliver much needed investment on the island. Yesterday, in an answer to written question 70, the Chief Minister said that Project Breakwater was a high-level scoping exercise, still at the concept stage and without a formal terms of reference. Can the Chief Minister explain which of those is true?
Well, sir, the Deputy is clearly giving her own interpretation to my words, which she's done before, sir. So we will be presenting where we are with Project Breakwater, the concept, to members shortly. I'm due to write to members with some further detail and explanation. As the written question states, Project Breakwater is a high-level scoping exercise, still at the concept stage. As it is still at a concept stage, so we haven't created formal terms of reference yet. We're still following a process. It still needs to be approved by Council of Ministers. At the time when we have all of the relevant detail, the Deputy Chief Minister is leading on it, he will share that with members, and it will follow the correct process at the right time. A business plan will be developed, and it will be built into the democratic process, which will be a proposition here, sir, and ultimately any funding will be built into the budget debates that we have. So that's sort of the process we followed for large projects such as the hospital, sir, although I hope it won't be as long and as torturous as that, sir. So that's basically the situation.
Supplemental question?
Yes, thank you, sir, and I thank the Chief Minister for that answer. I was pleased to see that the Chief Minister's answer to my written question said that Project Breakwater will be shared with States members and be subject to a public consultation once the concept has been agreed. Will the Chief Minister commit to making this a full and genuine public consultation, which gives islanders the chance to shape what could be a new opportunity for regeneration?
Yes, sir. I think I would certainly support public consultation for this. This is as members I hope will realise when we start to share what's being proposed, will present a unique opportunity for important investment in the island in many aspects of the island. And I would support that we hold strong public consultation to make sure we are in tune with what the public need and expect from us, from this government and future governments.
Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. What future uses are being considered for the Philip Lefevre building at Lamott Street?
I'm not sure there is any hard and fast future use agreed for that. There's been a number of ideas. I thought it's been considered for the health estate, it's been considered for green space, it's been considered for housing, but no decision has yet to be made, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
Yeah, so he's alluded to green space there. Would the Minister agree that car parking would be a good use to support town retail and hospitality in conjunction with a new area of public open space?
Well, sir, I think there's all sorts of potential there, but I wouldn't like to preempt or express a personal opinion at this stage. I mean, it's a well-known fact that St Helier is short of green space, needs more improvements to its public realm, parks and green space. I'd like to see more parking. I'd like to see town more accessible by parking. But there are discussions ongoing on, and I don't want to preempt or perhaps steer those discussions by expressing a personal opinion. So we need to be open-minded and have the debate. Thank you.
Deputy Tadier.
Thanks, sir. At the last sitting 3 weeks ago, I asked the Chief Minister about the ongoing situation at the Opera House. In the meantime, I think last week, the Performing Arts Development Group have written an open letter to the Chief Minister, again saying that the unusability of the Opera House because of the technical state of the equipment there means that it can't host many types of show. And they've actually said that it's almost as if they've built an airport, but they've forgotten to build a control tower, put in the landing lights or the landing system. So I'm not interested in necessarily allocating blame, because this was something that came up in a scrutiny hearing on Thursday. But will the Chief Minister undertake to find a solution to this ongoing situation so that what should be a good news story for the cultural community in Jersey can actually be that? And if so, would the Chief Minister commit to actually matched funding for the new equipment, bearing in mind that already £1 million has been raised by the Opera House from donations?
Thank you, sir. We've just received an audit report on the state of the equipment within the Opera House. And while the report says that the equipment is usable, it's fully functional, it's quite old, but it works. At the Opera House, and I want to make absolutely clear, according to the report we've received, is capable of staging shows. And I think it's a huge disappointment that the current management are not prepared to do that, and instead put their heels in the ground and said, we're not doing anything unless we get all of the new equipment that we need. And I think that's hugely disappointing given the amount of taxpayers' money that's spent in it. Now, sir, have we perhaps, should we have made sure that new equipment, technical equipment, was included in the refit? Possibly, with hindsight, we should have done, but it came in late in the day. It was asked for late in the day by the Opera House, and of course, at a time when budgets were having to be carefully considered. I know, because the Minister's been keeping me closely updated on the situation, that we want the Opera House to have the very best equipment, but that equipment can't be bought at any cost. We must do the research, we must go out to tender, we must make sure we're getting the right deal. And I'm sure the government will find a contribution towards that equipment in due course. So that, let's be clear, the Opera House can open, it can stage shows. Okay, we might not be able to get the all singing and all dancing sort of West End touring shows over right now, but you know, I'd like to see the Opera House open for Liberation 80 with a great concert.
Thanks, sir. It might take a bit more than foot stamping to get the Opera House up and running, sir, on top of the £12.7 million. So the letter was also co-signed by the Jersey Amateur Dramatics Club, the Jersey Green Room Theatre Company, the Curtain Up Theatre Group, the Timpan Alley Productions, the Jersey Symphony Orchestra Association, and the Jersey Island Singers, all of whom agree that in its current form, the theatre can't open and can't host a great number of productions. These are not clubs and associations which complain readily, sir. So does the Minister accept that there seems to be a difference of opinion from various groups who are in the know, have expertise, and that rather than pointing fingers actually about who knew what when, that actually we need to sit down, and I'd be happy to be part of that, and to actually find a solution about what equipment is needed so that this theatre can be, I think, if not world-class, certainly of national class, to host these kind of events, sir.
If we all agree with that, so we all want the Opera House to look its best, to be its best, to perform at its very best. We want the very best equipment, but we have to make sure we're doing that in a sensible a manner that delivers the best value for the taxpayer. That will take a little bit of time, hopefully not too long. And I suppose, and I welcome the letter that I received on Friday evening of last week from those groups. They're well-regarded, well-respected groups that contribute a lot to the arts in Jersey. So, of course, I was pleased to receive that, and we'll listen to it. But I have to disagree. We have one report recently reproduced that says it can open, another group saying it can't. I'm minded to side with the report that says, yes, we can open, because it's been a technical. They've been down there, they've tested all the equipment and said it can open. But I do agree that it would be preferential for us to update the ageing equipment as soon as possible. The Minister agrees. We've just got to sit down and find the right path to do that as quickly as possible. In the meantime, I would urge those involved with the management of the Opera House just to relax their position and in the interests of Jersey and the taxpayer investment, get something going on there. So in the meantime, it can be doable, and they'd have our full support if they were to do that.
There's a time perhaps for a very quick question. Deputy Jeune.
Thank you, sir. Could the Chief Minister clarify whether businesses that have yet to repay their COVID overpayments should be eligible to apply for and receive taxpayer-funded support through the Productivity Fund?
I was looking at the Treasury Minister, sir, because I wasn't sure whether that is already a requirement in place. I'm not too sure. I think where there are agreed repayment terms in place for COVID, a debt that are operating in line with what's agreed, that could be fine. So, but I think if businesses are in general arrears, then there is a restriction on receiving support. So, but I'd have to check with the Treasury on that.
I'm afraid there's no time for a supplementary question, Deputy. That brings the question time available for the Chief Minister to an end, and the end of question times more generally. We therefore move towards public business, but before we start it formally, we need to make a decision about whether the minimum lodging period can be reduced for a matter on the order paper. The Minister for Justice and Home Affairs, do you wish to make a proposition under the appropriate standing order for the lodging period to be reduced to allow P8 Draft Crime Public Order Jersey Amendment Law to be debated at this meeting?
Yes, please, sir. Sir, I would like to ask the Assembly to take this matter early, before the completion of the usual lodging period, because I believe that it is in the public interest to do so. If adopted, this provision will restore legal certainty to the application of some restraining orders, which has become unclear due to the recent legislative changes. If the Assembly will be willing to take this matter today, then it can be passed to the next meeting of the Privy Council and hopefully receive royal assent in early March, rather than delayed the debate until April and seeking royal assent in May. I've discussed the proposal with my ministerial colleagues and also with the scrutiny panel, sir.
Is the proposition seconded? Yes, sir. Does anyone wish to speak? Those in favour of adopting kindly show. Those against? Very well, we will deal with the matter at the end of the list of public business of this sitting. The first then formal item of public business is the Estates of Jersey Development Company pre-sales provisions for residential developments and pre-lets provisions for commercial developers P88, lodged by the Council of Ministers, and the main respondent is the Chair of the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel. Chief Minister, there is an amendment that has been lodged by the Council of Ministers. Do you wish to have the proposition as amended?
Yes, sir.
Are members content that the proposition be taken as amended? Deputy Master?
Excuse me, sir, to interrupt. You said the main respondent was the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Panel. I believe it's the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel.
You may very well be right, but let me consult. Yes, I'm sorry, you're quite right. It is the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel is the main responder, and therefore that panel gets a chance to speak without the time constraints in the normal way. The Chief Minister has asked, and members have agreed, we'll take that the proposition is amended, and I ask therefore that the greffier read the proposition as amended.
The States are asked to decide whether they are of opinion that the States of Jersey Development Company Limited should accord with the following pre-sales provisions for residential developments and pre-lets provisions for commercial developments. If it is proposed that a specific development is undertaken directly by SOJDC, before committing to construction costs, SOJDC will, on a residential development, have to secure a minimum of 25% of the gross development value as legally binding pre-sales and meet third-party funding requirements, or, on a commercial development, a sufficient level of legally binding pre-lets that, together with the unlet space, will deliver an end value of the completed building that exceeds the costs of constructing the development. This will remove part of the sales letting risk of a particular development project.
Chief Minister.
Sir, the Treasury Minister will act as rapporteur for this item.
Treasury Minister.
Thank you, sir. So as the members of the Assembly have accepted an amendment, I think I will deal with the proposition as amended, starting with the main proposition. Sir, P73 of 2010, which established the Estates of Jersey Development Company, contains a number of risk mitigation measures that SOJDC are obliged to follow when progressing property developments. One of these measures relates to the level of pre-sales that SOJDC have to secure before they can engage a contractor to commence the development. This measure has served SOJDC well to date in a low inflation and low interest rate environment, and SOJDC has successfully delivered a number of developments that have met or exceeded projections in terms of profitability. However, 14 years on from P73, the economic environment is now very different. The existing measure actually now creates greater risk as SOJDC attempt to forecast the level of pre-sales needed to meet the threshold, whilst construction and interest costs may escalate during a protracted pre-sales period. P.8 of 2024 was therefore designed to recognise that SOJDC's board and their third-party lenders will assess each development on its own merits and determine the appropriate level of pre-sales or pre-lets rather than having an arbitrarily high threshold. The original proposal was approved by the Regeneration Steering Group and the Council of Ministers as it would provide a number of benefits. The principal benefit for islanders is that with this more flexible approach, SOJDC will be able to progress their developments more quickly, delivering much needed quality homes and public realm and infrastructure improvements. It will also provide SOJDC with greater certainty in terms of the viability of developments going forward. The construction industry will also potentially benefit from the earlier delivery of SOJDC's development pipeline. Sir, members should not be under any misapprehension that in supporting this proposition, SOJDC are being given free rein with their activities. In accordance with the provisions of P73, SOJDC provides regular reports on all of their activities to the Regeneration Steering Group. Those updates include progress on pre-sales and pre-lets of individual developments. To take an example, SOJDC will shortly be launching their pre-sales process for the South Hill development, although I believe it now has a new name, but I'm not entirely sure what it is. And during that period, updates will be provided both to the Regeneration Steering Group and to myself in our regular shareholder meetings. Further, each development is subject to individual ministerial approval. So, again taking the example of South Hill, assuming SOJDC meet both the minimum threshold for pre-sales as well as the lender and board's own thresholds, the board will seek my approval to their decision to progress the development, appoint a main contractor and enter into borrowing for the development. The ministerial decision, in my case, is supported by a third-party analysis of the business case, which will be prepared by an independent advisor. Sir, if I could return now to the amendment. The amendment follows positive engagement with the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel, and I thank the members of the panel for that. While SOJDC is by no means a speculative developer, I am confident that providing for a minimum 25% of pre-sale or pre-late threshold as proposed by the panel, as recommended by the panel, will provide members with further assurance. The reality is that the third-party lender for each development and the SOJDC board itself may well assess that a greater threshold is needed before construction can commence. I can also provide further assurance that, as I've said, the commencement of development is subject to Treasury ministerial approval. I believe that the amendment represents a sensible refinement of the original proposition, and in view of the supportive comments from the CSSP, I'm happy that members also would urge members to support the proposition as amended. In summary, I believe that this is a positive step to support and enhance and accelerate SOJDC's activities, and given its track record of delivering successful and profitable developments, I urge members to support this proposition as amended. Thank you, sir.
Is the proposition as amended seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir, and I rise to speak as Chair of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel. As members will see, the panel has provided comprehensive comments about this proposition, and I won't revisit the content in full, but I do want to refer to some specific points. As part of its review of the draft proposition, the panel reflected on the changing risk profile and its impact, the risk of the current market conditions, where other development units are struggling to sell, and the scope and viability of the proposals in respect of the South Hill development and on any future SOJDC developments. The panel also assessed the governance processes and steps taken to assess risk by all entities involved and the implications of the establishment of a robust memorandum of understanding between the Minister for Treasury and Resources and the SOJDC to ensure that appropriate risk management and governance is achieved. The panel is under no illusion that the proposed revisions to P73/2010 would bring a change in the risk profile. However, after careful consideration, the panel is mindful of the reasoning for the draft proposition under the current economic conditions and of the potential impact should the status quo be maintained, which could potentially impact growth, material costs, labour and lead-in times associated with developments by the SOJDC. Hence the rationale for establishing measures which support a model where development costs can be affirmed sooner rather than later, and to help support the delivery of more viable schemes. So finally, sir, the panel is very grateful to the Minister for Treasury and Resources, her officers, and the SOJDC for their very positive engagement on the draft proposition, which has assisted in informing the review of the draft proposition and outcomes, including the proposed amendment. The panel is content to support the amended proposition. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. As a panel member before the chair who just spoke, I don't intend to add much, and I would like to thank likewise the the Minister for proposing an amendment following the work scrutiny performed. I'd like to just highlight a bit from my experience of that scrutiny engagement and where I think there are some interesting areas we still have to cover. The report of P88, for one thing, makes it very clear that this is an element to address South Hill. It references the opportunity or risk that SOJDC and the Minister can conceive with the timeline for that. And I think the panel naturally agreed that the previous terms of P73 were not correct for the current market, and the position to be in now is a better one. And I think the safeguards provided with the 25% are important. One concern that I think came up was actually that the terms would be between either that of a financial lender or that of the board. And in further examination, we did uncover and understand that any development by SOJDC is, as many members know, held within an independent company to limit liability on both SOJDC's other developments and on the Government of Jersey. But what this also means is that the security for 2/3 of the lending by any financial lender is on the assets being developed within that development. What that means is if the development or the financial provider wants to call in their debt, to say, because SOJDC have failed to generate sufficient payments, all they need to realise is 66% of what the target value was to bring back their money, and the island could be left with both a burden of what was funded by SOJDC and obviously having lost potentially valuable public land being developed by SOJDC. And that's why I think one element of bringing in a minimum is important. And I think it is important in all these conversations we talk about that risk profile and who's holding that risk. One thing we were told is SOJDC very much manage risk as a board who cares about and is worried about their sustainability and their viability. But I do think we still have to recognise SOJDC to some extent operates under the shelter of the Government of Jersey. In a recent meeting, one professional explained that at the end of the day, movements between the Government of Jersey and SOJDC are, in essence, group transfers. There is still a level of interconnectivity between the liabilities and the assets of SOJDC and of the public of the island, of the government. So I think it is important that risk mitigations are in there. And I would draw that we do need to think beyond South Hill and understand what these kind of decisions mean to other developments. Of course, later today, sir, we will be debating a proposed sale of Aviemore. And what happens under these arrangements is a minimum of 25% of the development value of Aviemore, likewise, will be needed to have a pre-sale prior to construction contracts being commenced. Members may feel that's a good thing or a bad thing. The proposition is, as now amended, there is no way to change that and lower that. It will, I think, in turn highlight a question of SOJDC's identity when it comes to development. A development like Aviemore that we will see and others feel to many maybe more ad hoc compared to the strategic nature of regeneration proposed in P73 2010, which is SOJDC's remit. I think if we look around, I think many of the developments that we've seen based on speculative nature have sometimes the entire property portfolio still unsold. And there could still be a risk that engaging in this kind of activity with our development company without thinking about the wider model and making smaller ad hoc changes like this could in turn be challenging to developments that are more akin to open market residential and speculative developments. So I think this is a change that is suitably mitigated in risk, but I do think in what we've uncovered in having these conversations with SOJDC, in having them with conversations with officers from the government, there is more work to be done to understand the implications of how one funds and develops different types of property through SOJDC, and I'm sure that, sir, is a topic we'll discuss quite briefly. So those are the comments, but I do thank the Minister for the amendment and I can support it as amended.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? No other member wishes to speak? I close the debate and call upon the Minister to respond.
Thank you, sir. So, I don't think I have a great deal to say in response other than simply to assure members that risk is considered very carefully in each and every development and in each and everything that SOJDC do. I would have to say I meet them quarterly, and I am absolutely confident in the board's professionalism and care with which they conduct their business and which they enter into any ventures within their remit. South Hill, yes, of course, that is the next thing in the development. So clearly that is first front of our minds in thinking about how this proposition will have effect, but it will apply to all future developments where there is lending, and the risk of unsold units or unlet units is very, very much in their mind. And we do have to remember, I will just make this comment, we have to, SOGDC aren't just asked to build a building and put whatever in it, sell it to all comers. They're either building homes, they have a clear remit on placemaking and building communities and building places where people want to live. Now, there are, I believe, in, I think, the Horizon development, still 1 or 2 unlet units in the bottom. And as the Chief Executive has said to me, he could let those any day of the week if he was putting offices in there. But they are looking for businesses and hospitality outlets that will actually contribute to a community and sense of place. And that's why they're taking the time to try and get good tenants into those buildings that will contribute to the waterfront and make it a place where people want to live and visit for work and leisure. And I would simply say, as regards Aviemore, which we will discuss later, taking a, I believe, unused and derelict building and turning it into homes is entirely regenerative in my opinion. So, sir, I again urge members to support the proposition as amended. Thank you.
Those in favour of adopting the proposition...
Call for the appel.
The appel is called for. I invite members to return to their seats. The vote is on P88, and I ask the greffier to open the voting and members to vote. If members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The proposition has been adopted. 40 votes for, no votes contra, no abstentions. We can carry on, and...
So could I propose the adjournment?
Well, yes, Deputy, I think even though we're slightly earlier than we need to, I think the next item of public business will be the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs, and then we'll deal with the Aviemore matter at the end. So after luncheon, we will take that. The Assembly stands adjourned until 2:50.